After graduating from university, Isla had joined the Olsen family business. Over time, she had become deeply familiar with its inner workings, including Mrs. Olsen's email account. She knew the password by heart and had carefully read through the correspondence between Mrs. Olsen and Drive South. She'd noticed a pattern. Drive South responded to Mrs. Olsen's messages immediately and without question, always resolving issues swiftly and with respect. It was clear he held her in high regard. That was precisely why Isla had dared to fabricate the claim that Drive South had accepted the Horton Group's invitation. She believed she could gamble on his loyalty. With a confident smile, she opened her inbox to check for his reply. But the words she read made her blood run cold. "I'm only responsible for the Olsen family. I'm not required to deal with issues concerning the Horton Group." Her smile faltered and froze. Jake, noticing her change in expression, frowned. "What's wrong?" Regaining her composure quickly, Isla lied. "Drive South said it'll take a few days to resolve the issue." Jake let out a sigh of relief. "That's understandable. This is a complex matter. But I made a bet with with Group 1, that we'd have a solution before Friday. Is that okay?" Isla forced a smile. "No problem." But her eyes flickered uneasily. "Kira." He said her name without thinking. Jake returned to the Horton residence soon after, a subtle sense of unease twisting in his chest as thoughts of Kira lingered. Inside, his father, Oliver, greeted him unusually warmly, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "My brilliant son, you managed to bring in Drive South? You'll make your mark in our /and D quickly." Jake was pleasantly surprised. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll work even harder to help you regain your position." "Good," Oliver said before heading to the master bedroom, apparently content to stay in for the night. Melissa Knight, Jake's mother, was nearly in tears, but this time with joy. "Your father, he's staying home tonight? Not chasing after that woman." She wiped her tears and smiled. "You must surpass that illegitimate daughter. Only then will your father truly see your worth." She added, "Isla may be disliked by Mrs. Horton, but this time she did exceptionally well." "All right, enough. I'll go check on your father." Jake watched his mother head happily toward the bedroom, his jaw set. Proposing to Isla and using Drive South as leverage had been the right move. He had made his decision. There was no turning back. As for Kira, she would be his. Meanwhile, Kira sneezed. She sniffled, reached absent-mindedly for her glass, only to find it empty. Just as she was about to get up, a hand appeared in her peripheral vision. Lewis placed a fresh glass of water on the table beside her. Kira blinked, surprised. "Thank you." "You're welcome," he replied simply, returning to his seat. Old Mrs. Horton, sitting nearby, watched the two with a delighted grin. "At this rate, I'll have a great-grandchild soon," she thought gleefully. She pulled on her reading glasses, flipped open the book of songs, and began scanning names, ready to plan ahead. There Sheba Inu, ironically named Kitten, gave a small huff and padded over to curl up at Lewis's feet. The next day, Lewis showed no sign of injury despite the burns. He remained sharp, dressed in his usual black suit. Not once did he complain or show discomfort. Kira couldn't help but be impressed by his endurance. As they left for work, she slipped into Lewis's car without hesitation. Tom was at the wheel and observed them through the rearview mirror. There was no conversation, no shared glances, yet something between them had subtly shifted. When they arrived at the office, Kira stepped out, but before she could enter the /and D department, Jake appeared with a coffee cup in hand, waiting outside the elevator. "There's an industry networking event tonight," he began, "about new energy innovations. All the big names will be there. Drive South might attend." Kira didn't break stride. "And our /and D department got an invitation. I could take you along to network, build connections. It'll benefit your career." "No thanks," Kira replied coolly, heading into the office without looking back. Jake stood frozen, his face darkening. Jalen strolled by in slippers, yawning. With a smirk, he muttered, "One invite, and you think you can buy her? Kira's not that easy." Jake snapped. "If you really cared, you'd push her to follow me. I can offer better resources. You think you can even attend these events?" Jalen turned to him, eyes calm. I don't think I can. He was, after all, a core or /and D member. Jake's gaze sharpened, a seed of resentment planted. That evening, Kira was gathering her things when Jalen stopped her. Come on, we've got something tonight. Sure, she nodded, without hesitation. She sent Lewis a quick message, working overtime. Don't wait up. Then followed Jalen out. They arrived at a bustling commercial cocktail party. Stick with me, Jalen said. I'll introduce you to some key people. Don't count on Drive South showing. He rarely attends these, but it'll be good exposure. Kira nodded, only mildly interested. Still, it had been a while since she last saw Samuel. It wouldn't hurt to look around. As they approached the entrance, Jalen presented their invitation, but was stopped. I'm sorry, Mr. Riley. We received the final list from Horton Group. Your name isn't on it. Jalen's expression hardened. That's impossible. He was well known in the field, rarely attending such events, but never denied. Just then, Jake strolled out, champagne in hand. Ah, Jalen. Group 1 has so much going on. I assumed you wouldn't make it. I declined your spot. Too late to add you now. You should head back. You what? Jalen exploded. You had no right. As deputy or /and D manager, I can manage our team's attendance. Remember, the invite was extended to Horton Group, not you personally. Jalen trembled with rage. He was no pushover. Skilled engineers like him could command top positions anywhere. Even the department director wouldn't dare disrespect him. Jake leaned in smugly. No need to create a scene, Jalen. Security's just a call away. Then, turning to Kira, he added, Now you see? Without my approval, you can't even get past the front door. Kira met his gaze evenly. Is that so? She pulled out her phone and displayed an email to the staff member. It was a personal invitation from Samuel. Jake's smirk faded. The staff checked it, nodded politely, and stepped aside. You may enter, Miss Olson. Kira walked past Jake without a second glance, and the door closed firmly behind her. Kira handed the invitation to the staff member. May I enter now? With a quick glance, the staff member immediately stepped aside and gestured politely. Of course, Miss Olson. Welcome. Jake's face twisted in confusion and disbelief. Wait, how did you get an invitation? He stepped forward, trying to peek at her phone. Don't tell me you borrowed someone else's invite. They check ID at the door. But as he caught a glimpse of the screen, he froze. The name on the digital invitation was clear and unmistakable. Invitee, Kira Olson. There was no listed company, no position, just her name. Most invitations listed the guest's affiliation, especially when it was extended through a company. Jalen's invite, for example, was granted both for his individual reputation and his association with the Horton Group. But Kira's invitation stood alone, unanchored by any corporate label. Jake's voice dropped, shocked. In what capacity did you even get this invite? Kira locked her screen calmly. That's none of your business. She turned toward Jalen. Shall we go in? Jalen, still stunned by the turn of events, nodded and followed. He had been preparing for the worst, fully expecting to be barred entry. But Kira had just flipped the script. As they passed through the entrance, he leaned closer. Where did that come from? Kira opened her mouth, but Jalen cut in with a guess. Wait, your cousin, right? It wasn't linked to any company, so no strings attached. Smart move. Then his expression darkened. Jake really crossed the line this time. I'm not letting it slide. Kira assumed he'd say something like go to HR or report it to the board. But instead, he surprised her. I'll ask my cousin to back me up on this. Kira blinked. Wait, what happened to hating nepotism? Jalen noticed the confusion and scratched his nose awkwardly. Don't get me wrong. I hate leeches who ride coattails without ability. But in Horton Group, connections are everywhere. The real problem is when people without merit abuse them. Then, brushing the moment aside, he grabbed a glass of champagne and offered it to Kira. Come on, let me introduce you to a few people. Before she could decline, he was already calling out. Mr. King, a middle-aged man surrounded by industry peers, turned to the call. His face lit up. Mr. Riley, it's rare to see you at these events. Finally taking time to mingle with us? Jalen laughed modestly. You flatter me. I'm still a junior, here to learn. In fact, I brought someone worth your time. He stepped aside and gestured to Kira. This is Kira Olson. She recently solved an issue that stumped me for over a month. Today's the first time I've been able to leave the lab. The words drew attention. Mr. King and the others turned their focus to Kira, now curious. Really? Then you must introduce us properly. Before Jalen could reply, a familiar voice chimed in, honeyed and smooth. Mr. King, what a coincidence. Long time no see. The crowd shifted as Isla appeared in an elegant blue gown, arm in arm with Jake Horton. Instantly, Mr. King and his peers turned away from Kira and toward the newcomer. Miss Olson, what surprise. Are you here with Drive South? Isla smiled. Not today. I'm here with my fiancé. He also works in renewable energy. Jake stepped forward and extended a hand. Jake Horton, Horton Group. Recognition lit Mr. King's eyes. Ah, young Mr. Horton, a pleasure. Miss Olson and Mr. Horton make a wonderful pair. Miss Olson, Drive South has helped the Olson family, right? When will he make an appearance, so we can all benefit from his expertise? What's the most challenging issue he's resolved for your family? A crowd quickly formed around Isla and Jake, pushing Jalen and Kira to the fringes. Jalen's jaw clenched. They're doing it on purpose. He turned to Kira. Don't worry. They may have a crowd, but they don't have him. Samuel Morgan is expected to arrive any minute. That's who you should be meeting. Kira said nothing, though inwardly, she wasn't sure how to feel. Jalen noticed her hesitation and added, don't be shy. Just thicken your skin. Do you know how many people are dying to talk to Samuel? I don't even know him personally yet. Kira raised an eyebrow. I could introduce you. He brushed it off. Nah, you focus on getting to know him first. Just then, a wave of whispers rippled through the room as a commotion stirred at the entrance. Samuel Morgan had arrived. He walked in wearing a tailored light gray suit, one hand in his pocket, his face unreadable. His usually warm demeanor was replaced by something colder, more distant. The crowd immediately surged forward. Mr. Morgan. Samuel, long time no see. What projects are you working on now? But instead of joining the rush, Isla and Jake approached Kira. Isla smiled sweetly. Kira, would you like me to introduce you to Mr. Morgan? Jake added, voice laced with sarcasm. Considering she got an invite, she must know someone powerful. Maybe she and Mr. Morgan go way back. Isla laughed softly. Oh, that would be surprising. Samuel Morgan isn't exactly approachable. I just thought, never mind. You clearly don't need help. I wouldn't want to teach my grandmother to suck eggs. Jalen rolled his eyes, grabbed another glass of champagne, and handed it to Kira. Ignore them. Go make a toast to Mr. Morgan. Jake sneered. You think Horton Group uses flirtation to climb ladders? And Morgan? He's not the type to be seduced. Plenty of women have tried to cozy up to him for insider info on Drive South, and he's ignored them all. You think you're different? Isla gently tugged Jake's sleeve. Come on, let's go say hello. They turned and walked toward the crowd. But just before Isla could call out again, Samuel turned his head. He seemed ready to look away after spotting Isla, until his gaze froze on the person behind her. His eyes locked onto Kira. For a moment, his stern expression wavered. Then, to everyone's shock, Samuel Morgan walked straight past Isla and Jake, heading directly for Kira. Isla's heart leapt with joy. Asterisk, he recognized me. In front of everyone. Asterisk. She nudged Jake excitedly, who straightened in surprise. Could it be that Drive South holds Isla in such high regard after all? Isla smiled radiantly and started to speak. Mr. Morgan, this is... But Samuel didn't stop. He brushed past them like they didn't exist, and came to a halt in front of Kira. He looked at her, brows furrowed slightly. What are you doing here?
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Everyone was stunned. At these kinds of gatherings, Samuel always held himself aloof. When had they ever seen him this enthusiastic? And the way he spoke to her. What was the background of this 20-something young woman? Isla clenched her fists, feeling a burning sensation on her face. Jake frowned, his gaze shifting between Samuel and Kira. You two know each other? Samuel looked at Kira and hesitated to speak. He didn't know if his boss wanted to reveal her identity. Sure enough, the next second, Kira raised the champagne in her hand too. Samuel with a warning look in her eyes. Mr. Morgan, hello. I'm too young to bear this formality. Samuel took the hint and cleared his throat. Miss Olson, I didn't expect to meet you here, so I was overly excited. At his words, everyone looked at Kira's stunning face and seemed to understand something. They all broke into laughter. Mr. King walked over and teased. Mr. Morgan, truly you have good taste. She's indeed a rare beauty. Samuel quickly returned. Miss Olson is not only beautiful, but also incredibly capable. Mr. King was taken aback. Jalen had just praised Kira as well. He finally took her seriously. Miss Olson, this is my business card. I hope we have the opportunity to work together in the future. After Mr. King, the rest of the crowd quickly chimed in. To be praised by Mr. Morgan, Miss Olson must be extraordinary. Such accomplishment at a young age. Kira wasn't fond of these gatherings and just responded with a faint smile. Jalen, on the other hand, was chatting and mingling with them. As Jake watched Kira shine like a newly risen star, he felt a discomfort in his chest. He scoffed. No matter how capable she is, can she be more capable than drive south? At his words, the crowd fell silent. Samuel raised an eyebrow and revealed a meaningful smile, but said nothing. Kira was calmly holding her champagne glass, with no intention of responding. In the end, it was Mr. King who broke the awkward situation. The highest level in the industry, of course, would be drive south. But Miss Olson is so young, with such a promising future. I heard from Mr. Riley that you're also working for the Horton Group? Young Mr. Horton, your company attracts such talent all the time. Kira couldn't help but approve of his words. With this triple compliment, no one was offended, and Jake was flattered as well. He didn't say anything else. The lively atmosphere returned, and everyone continued their laughter and conversation. Samuel didn't dare to bring the topic back to Kira again, and the crowd's attention was quickly back on him, asking him about Drive South's whereabouts. Kira took this opportunity to slip out of the crowd. The lobby was brightly lit. Everyone dressed smartly and was toasting and exchanging drinks. Although the place was full of people, Kira didn't enjoy the liveliness. On the contrary, she found it more comfortable when she was in the hospital with the old lady and Louis in one room while each was minding their own business. She walked on a balcony, took out her phone, and found a message from Louis. I just happened to be at the Royal Hotel for a meeting. We can go back together when it's over. Kira smiled and suddenly felt like leaving. It was entirely acceptable to leave such an occasion early. Jalen followed her out. No wonder you said you'd introduce me to Samuel. Morgan, you two know each other so well. Kira didn't deny it and gave him a light smile. Jalen recalled what happened at the banquet just now. Although Samuel was talking to others, his gaze always seemed to drift toward her. Samuel must be interested in Kira. They were all grown-ups. Samuel was handsome and capable. He would be a good choice. So he asked, "What do you think of Samuel?" Kira considered the question and answered, "He's dependable, hardworking, and trustworthy. He was a very useful subordinate. Otherwise, she wouldn't have entrusted him with full control of the company." Jalen's eyes lit up. "So, you're saying you're also attracted to him?" If Kira could really be with Samuel, he would surely introduce her to Drive South. Kira was dumbfounded. Only then did she understand what Jalen meant, and she was about to laugh and reply when a cough suddenly came from nearby. The two of them turned their heads and saw Louis standing on the balcony of the next banquet hall. He was half a head taller than Jalen. At this moment, his expression was dark, and his black eyes were cold as they watched them. Louis didn't expect to bump into them by such a coincidence either. As he walked by, he happened to hear their conversation. The few praises Kira had for Samuel Morgan made him feel inexplicably uncomfortable. He harshly reprimanded Jalen. "Miss Olson is already married. What are you messing around here for? It's absurd." Jalen felt somewhat aggrieved. He didn't know that Kira was married. Why was his cousin suddenly angry at him? But he quickly looked at Kira. "You're married? Does Samuel know?" He didn't want Samuel to be turned down and became resentful. Samuel might target Kira. Kira nodded. Yes. Jalen finally breathed a sigh of relief and then asked curiously, "You're so young. Why did you get married so early? Who's your spouse? You're so dedicated." Kira glanced at Lewis without saying anything. Lewis simply said, "You talk too much." Jalen was speechless. He had a feeling his cousin was acting strange today. Lewis narrowed his eyes, turned to Kira, and asked, "I'm ready to leave. Are you coming with me?" Kira immediately nodded. "Sure, I'll meet you at the entrance." Jalen hastily followed her. "Wait for me. I'm coming with you." Back in the banquet hall, seeing Jake's gloomy face, Isla felt uneasy. Did Kira know Drive South as well as Samuel? Just as she was thinking about this, Jake had already walked up to Samuel. "Mr. Morgan, does Kira know Drive South as well?" The people around immediately gazed at him. Samuel could imagine that if he said, "Yes," these people would probably rush toward Kira and force her to reveal her relationship with Drive South. He cleared his throat. How could that be possible? Isla and Jake both breathed a sigh of relief. Samuel noticed Kira walking toward the exit and quickly said, "I have some errands to run. I should leave now. We'll talk later." Everyone smiled meaningfully when they saw him chase after Kira. Jake's face darkened even more. Samuel caught up with Kira at the entrance. "I need to go abroad to discuss a project tomorrow. I'll be taking the company's seal and patent descriptions. I just wanted to let you know." Kira nodded. Only then did Samuel leave. After he left, Kira suddenly noticed the strange look in Jalen's eyes. He stared at her. Something's not right. If Mr. Morgan is going abroad, why is he reporting to you? Could it be? He gave her a dumbfounded look. Kira hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Okay, I admit it. I am Drive South." Kira's identity wasn't something she needed to keep a secret. She had no intention of hiding it from her team. As long as there wasn't any widespread proclamation, it should save her from any unnecessary trouble. So, when Jalen sensed something was amiss, she decided to just come clean. Upon hearing her words, Jalen was startled. He stared at Kira in disbelief. Then he suddenly let out a chuckle. "You do have a sense of humor." Kira didn't know what to say. Jalen said, "I may not have met Drive South, but I know for sure that to have academic talents like him, one must be at least in their 40s. You can't fool me." Kira twitched the corner of her lips. "No, really, I am Drive South." "Ah, so you thought saying that would get rid of my suspicions?" Jalen looked her up and down, furrowing his eyebrows. "Don't tell me you're having an affair with Samuel." Kira said, "You have quite a vivid imagination." "What in the world?" Jalen frowned, advising her, "Don't do that kind of thing. It'll humiliate us all. It's not good. I really look down on cheaters. We're all respectable people. If you don't love your husband, just divorce and remarry." Just as he said those words, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine, as if there was a murderous intent. He turned around and found Lewis striding out, his deep eyes as cold as ancient ice, making Jalen feel as if he was chilled to the bone. Jalen was even more puzzled. "Lewis, did your business deal not go well today?" Lewis looked away. "You talk too much." Jalen was speechless. Kira noticed that Jalen, the fearless heir, was most afraid of his cousin. At this moment, a flashy yellow sports car pulled up in front of them. Samuel whistled at her. "Miss Olson, I just got this car. How about I give you a ride?" He was eager to show off to his boss. Thinking about Kira's driving speed, he wanted to make her scream. Kira caught the hint in his eyes and was about to refuse, but Lewis suddenly spoke up. "It's out of your way." Samuel smiled. "Wherever she's going, it's on my way." Toot. Kira was a little speechless and subconsciously looked at Jalen. The suspicion in his eyes had deepened. She didn't notice that Lewis's face had darkened. Lewis glanced at her, his sharp eyebrows furrowing slightly as he advised softly, "After drinking, don't get in a stranger's car." Kira raised an eyebrow, looking at Samuel. "I think I'll ride with Mr. Horton." "All right." Samuel hung his head, seemingly less interested. "See you then." Vroom. The sports car roared to start and quickly disappeared out of sight. It was then that Lewis's black Bentley slowly rolled up. The extended version of the Bentley felt much sturdier and safer than that thin sports car. Tom ran over to open the door. Lewis gestured for Kira to get in first, then he got in the car. When Jalen was about to get in, he was stopped. "Don't you have a car?" Jalen said, "I drank today." "I see." Lewis responded indifferently. "Then you can take a cab." Jalen was speechless. What happened to don't get in a stranger's car after drinking? The car door closed, and the Bentley mercilessly drove off, leaving Jalen standing there alone. The car steadily drove down the road. Outside the car window, kaleidoscopic neon lights poured into the compartment as Lewis's gaze brushed over the woman sitting next to him. Street lights cast on her beautiful face, bathing it in a faint halo of light. Lewis was momentarily lost before suddenly speaking up. "Miss Olson, could you help me change my bandages?" At these words, Kira paused. She slowly raised her head to look at him, seemingly taken aback. "Now?" "Yes," Lewis nodded. "If we wait until the hospital, my grandmother will be upset if she sees it." So that was it. Kira breathed a quiet sigh of relief. "Okay." He undressed, turning his back toward her. Kira turned on the ceiling light in the car and looked at him. This was the second time she saw him half naked. He was surprisingly muscular despite his slender appearance when he was dressed. He was radiating an exuberant sense of power. She focused her attention on his wounds. The blister hadn't reoccurred because he had a quick metabolism, typical for a young man. She sighed in admiration before taking out gauze and ointment from the first aid box to change his bandage. After applying the ointment, she prepared to wrap the gauze around his wounds. She knelt on the back seat and reached around Lewis's body. She was just about to sit back up when, whoosh, the car suddenly swerved, causing Kira to fall into Lewis. Her face landed on his shoulder. Lewis soon steadied himself by pressing his hands on the seat. But then he felt Kira's arms around him. Her soft hands instinctively held onto his chest, instantly making him stiffen. Then he felt her soft lips lightly touching his shoulder. His breath hitched, feeling as if that area of his skin had become sensitive like 1,000 ants crawling from his shoulder to his limbs. Lewis froze, his mind blank for a moment. Kira noticed his unusual reaction and thought she might have hurt his wounds. As soon as she steadied herself, she immediately pushed him away and asked, "Mr. Horton, are you in pain?" Her words finally helped Lewis to find his voice again. He said hoarsely, "I'm fine." Only then did Kira breathe a sigh of relief. She continued to wrap his wound with the gauze. Lewis immediately put on his shirt and sat there with a straight face. He felt that the space inside the car was too narrow and the air was insufficient. It was extremely stuffy. Thinking about those two hands and the remaining sensations on his shoulder, he loosened his tie. As soon as the car arrived at the hospital and came to a halt, he abruptly opened the door and bolted out, heading upstairs without looking back. Kira slowly got out of the car, watching him leave. She couldn't resist asking, "Tom, how much did he lose in the negotiation tonight to be so angry?" Tom rolled his eyes in his mind. The acquisition tonight cost $100 million less than the budget. His boss was very happy. However, he didn't say anything and just quickly followed Lewis. Kira shook her head slightly, ready to go upstairs, when suddenly a shadow darted in front of her, grinning, "My dear niece." It was her uncle, Finley. He glanced at the Bentley behind him, then turned back to watch Lewis with shifty eyes. "Mr. Horton must think very highly of you. Has he given you any money?" Kira narrowed her eyes and couldn't help but laugh. "Of course, not only Mr. Horton, but old Mrs. Horton also gave me some." Finley's eyes lit up instantly. Kira then said, "By the way, put a price on the truth you mentioned last time." Finley was taken aback. He said sincerely, "I can only get a payoff from you for that truth, so you need to pay enough, and then I'll reveal it." Kira was fiddling with her phone. In no time, Finley's phone buzzed with a notification of a bank transfer of $30,000. He was overjoyed. Kira said, "That's a deposit. I have another $70,000 here. Tell me, and it's all yours. Of course, I have to first determine whether your truth is worth this money." "Yes, it's definitely worth it. It's related to you." Terrified that the deal would slip through his fingers, Finley said hastily, "I'll tell you right now." "Enhance." Kira narrowed her eyes. "Speak." Finley took a step forward, lowering his voice. "This truth of mine, even if I sell it to you for $100,000, it's still a bargain. The Olsen family is so rich. Does the truth have something to do with the Olsen family?" Kira clenched her jaw. "Yes." Finley gave a sneaky smile. "Actually, you're—" Before he could finish his sentence, an angry voice ran out. "Finley Hill, Kira. Olsen, what are you two doing?" Kira turned her head, only to see Isla, disheveled and still in her party dress, running toward them. Finley chuckled. "I'm just doing business with my niece." Isla clenched her fists. "I already gave you the money." Finley shrugged. "But I need more money now." "How much more?" Isla took a deep breath. "I'll give it to you." Finley laughed. "Just now, my niece promised me $100,000. Isla tightly clenched her fists. Finley heaved a sigh. "I guess I'll make a deal with my niece." "I have the money." Isla gritted her teeth. "You go first. I'll give you the money tomorrow." "Okay." Finley turned around and ran off, speaking to Kira as he did so. "My dear niece, consider that 30,000 alone." He ran off quickly, afraid that Kira would demand the money back. What deadbeat! Kira remained unperturbed. If she wanted to get her money back, she had plenty of ways. She turned and walked toward the hospital building. Behind her, Isla answered a ringing phone. "Hello, Jake." Jake asked, "Isla, I remember Mrs. Olsen is from Clance. Ask her if she knows anyone from the Allen family." "The Allen family?" "Yes, the head of the family is named Frankie Allen. I just received news that my uncle wants to sign a contract with the Allen family, but he doesn't have any connections yet." Isla instantly saw light. Jake wanted to use the Allen family to reinforce his standing in the Horton group. She answered, "I'll ask my mom in a bit." After hanging up, Isla calmed herself down. If she could marry into the Horton family, $100,000 would be nothing. She needed to think of a way to connect with the Allen family. Mrs. Olsen was staying in a second-floor VIP ward, and old Mrs. Horton was on the third floor. Kira and Isla ascended the stairs together. When they reached the second floor, they saw a mother talking to her son. The mother said happily, "Your third aunt called just now, saying she has introduced you to a rich girl. You must go for the blind date." The son complained, "Mom, my wife just needs surgery, and she'll be cured. Why should I date someone else?" The mother said anxiously, "Didn't you hear what the nurse said? The operation will cost $70,000, not to mention the post-op care, which will cost more. Where will we get that kind of money?" The son pondered for a moment. "Let's sell the house." She bought it with her dowry. The mother shook her head in disapproval. "We can't sell the house. If she dies, you could still find someone better when you have a house. If you lose the house, you lose everything. After having lived together for 2 years, consider the house compensation for your wasted youth." The son was taken aback. "That doesn't seem right. She fell out with her family." "For me," the mother sneered. "It's precisely because she fell out with them that she hasn't been in touch with her family these 2 years. She can't expect support from her family, and nobody cares whether she lives or dies." She lowered her voice. "We'll just say we have no money and take her home. Once she's dead, which will happen very soon, you can marry the girl from T blind date. This one has nice wide hips, which is a good sign for childbearing. She won't be like your wife, who's from a good family, but doesn't have enough luck to enjoy it." The son squinted, suddenly interested. "Then let's not treat her." Although the pair lowered their voices, the hallway was very quiet and had echoes. Thus Kira heard everything clearly. She paused. She found the mother-in-law very wicked, and the son was equally disagreeable. She wondered which unfortunate girl had encountered such a hideous pair. Just as she thought of this, she felt something and looked toward the direction of the corridor. A frail girl with a very pale complexion dressed in a patientess gown was standing by the door. The mother and son also saw her, and their expressions changed dramatically. The son spoke up, "Rebecca." The girl named Rebecca said, "Call my dad. He'll give me the money for the medical fees." The mother scoffed. "We already tried, but as soon as they saw it was my son's number, they hung up. You sever ties with them. Why are you looking for them now?" Leaning against the wall and barely managing to stand there, Rebecca was quivering all over. She was so weak that she almost couldn't speak. She said to the son, "Then give me your phone. I'll call my brother." The son blinked. "Don't cause a scene. You're seriously ill. The doctor doesn't allow you to use the phone." Without hesitation, he said, "Mom, you go handle the discharge procedure. I'll take her home." Rebecca tried to run, but was too weak. She fell to the ground and used the last of her strength to latch onto Islah's leg. She whispered, "Help me call my brother, please." As Islah was about to go to the second floor, she was closer to the hallway. When she was grabbed, instead of feeling sympathetic, she immediately withdrew her leg. She rolled her eyes in disgust. "What do you want? For a guy? You severed ties with your family. Someone obsessed with romance never ends well. All of this is your own fault." Seeing that she didn't interfere, the mother and son sighed in relief. The son picked up Rebecca. "Rebecca Allen, your parents don't want you anymore. I'm your only guardian now. You're obliged to listen to me." Rebecca was on the brink of despair. She knew that going home with this mother and son meant death. But she didn't want to die. She knew she was wrong. She wanted to see her brother. She missed her parents. Regretful tears rolled down her cheeks, and Rebecca closed her eyes just as she thought her life would freeze in this moment. An indifferent voice rang out, "Wait." Rebecca opened her eyes, only to see the elegant figure stepping out from the shadows of the corridor. The woman's beautiful face showed no emotion as she walked up to her and simply said, "Phone number." Tears flowed down Rebecca's face. The mother yelled, "What are you doing? I warn you. Don't meddle in other people's affairs." The son also said, "Even if you call, it'll be useless. No one will answer." However, Kira only looked at Rebecca. The phone number. Rebecca weakly recited a string of numbers. Kira took out her phone and dialed the number. The call was quickly answered, and a young male voice came from the other end. "Hello, this is Frankie Allen." Kira instantly said, "Rebecca Allen is seriously ill and requires immediate surgery." The person on the other end immediately became anxious, and she could tell that he was running. He asked, "Where is she?" Kira gave him the name of the hospital. The man said, "I happen to be in Ocean for work. It will take me half an hour to get there." "All right." After hanging up, Kira turned to the mother and son. "Until her brother arrives, no one is allowed to take her away." Hearing that, Islah snickered. "You're so meddling. Be careful when her family arrives. They might blame you for this." "Enhance." With teary eyes, Rebecca asked, "My brother?" He said he would be here in half an hour. "Don't worry." Rebecca felt a bitter feeling inside her chest. She met and fell in love with her husband in college, and they got married after graduation. Her parents and brother didn't approve of their marriage. Ignoring her family's objections, she joined her husband in Ocean under his vows of eternal love. Over the past 2 years, her brother and parents had made countless calls, urging her to come home. She said she'd show them that she would be happy in Ocean. Her parents remained silent, and only her brother made one request. He told her not to tell her husband about her family's wealth for the first 2 years as a test. Rebecca was the family's treasure, and she had been pampered all her life, without doing a day's work. After settling in Ocean, she took advice from her mother-in-law and strived to be a good wife and mother. Every time she called her mother to tell the latter that she'd learned to cook, clean, and scrub the floors until they sparkled, her mother would cry, saying that she had been raised in luxury, not for such menial tasks. But Rebecca didn't mind. As long as they could make it through 2 years, she would bring her husband home, and they would reunite as a family. But never in a million years did she imagine that she might die here, all because of a mere $70,000. At this moment, she finally understood what her parents meant. She was degrading herself. Rebecca tried to look at Kira again. She wanted to remember the face of her savior. Just then, she heard her husband's voice. "Do you think you can get any benefits from helping her in anticipation that her brother would reward you? You're dreaming. Her family has no money. Even if they do come, knowing how much it costs, they would only give up. As for you, they'd feel you're meddling in their business." Rebecca's vision grew dark with anger. She pleaded, "My brother won't abandon me. Honey, my family has money. For the sake of our years together, hand me over to my brother. You can have my house, your house." Her husband sneered. "That house was bought after we got married and is considered a joint property. Besides, when we graduated from college, you were eager to elope with me to marry me. Your family doesn't love you, which is why you ran away from home out of desperation. Am I right? In these 2 years, you've never kept in touch with your family. Why would your brother take care of you?" Eager to elope? Rebecca felt a surge of anger. She struggled to breathe and fainted. Seeing that she seemed to have stopped breathing, Kira immediately stepped forward. "She needs resuscitation." "She doesn't need resuscitation." Her husband abruptly stepped back and shouted, "My wife once said that she didn't want to die in a terrible state. If she is seriously ill, she chooses to die naturally and doesn't accept any measures of resuscitation. Don't interfere with our private matters." Upon hearing this, Kira clenched her fists tightly. What a vicious man. The mother-in-law also rushed forward, standing directly between Kira and the man. "What are you doing? Everyone come and see. My daughter-in-law is dying, and her last wish is to die at home, but this person won't let us leave." She yelled very loudly, prompting patients and nurses around them to crowd around. Seeing this, the mother-in-law cried even harder. "Rebecca, why is your life so miserable? If this person hadn't meddled in our affairs and delayed us, you wouldn't have died in the hospital." Kira frowned, knowing that arguing with them now would only waste time. She rushed to the husband and reached out to grab the unconscious Rebecca. The husband tried to retreat, but Kira dislocated his arm. Rebecca slipped from his arms. Kira caught her and immediately started cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The head nurse rushed over when she heard the commotion. "What is happening?" The mother-in-law started crying and shouting, "Help us! My son and daughter-in-law have decided to give up treatment. This stranger won't let us go dash." With his arm dislocated, the husband was sweating with pain. Hearing the head nurse's question, he cried out, "I'm her guardian. Before she lost consciousness, she told me that she found the illness unbearable and didn't want to be resuscitated. She wanted to die with dignity. Look at what this woman is doing. Does my wife not even have the right to give up treatment?" The head nurse frowned, walking over to Kira. "Miss you." While performing CPR, Kira said, "This woman doesn't want to die. I've called her brother, and he'll be here soon." The head nurse, equally anxious to save a life, quickly added, "Her brother is also her family, and therefore her guardian. If her brother does not give up on the resuscitation, we can continue the rescue." This statement stunned the husband and the mother-in-law. Isla, standing nearby, slowly spoke up. "Kira, you shouldn't be forcing people like this. Even if she recovers, the surgery would cost a small fortune, and the subsequent costs for rehabilitation are unknown. Both the deceased and her husband have given up. Why did you insist on calling her brother? Even if he gets here, what's the point? Every family has its own difficulties. You can't morally kidnap others here." The husband suddenly understood something and started crying out, "We don't have any money, and my brother-in-law's family is also poor. The surgery itself costs $70,000, and the monthly treatment expenses are up to $10,000. My wife didn't want to burden us and her family. I am so useless. I can only watch my wife die." The cries of a grown man were quite moving. Every year, countless patients in the hospital chose to give up treatment. They had the right to choose death, and those around them immediately started accusing Kira. "This woman is so young and hasn't experienced the hardships of society. She's so naive. With her foolish enthusiasm, she's just delaying someone's burial. Wouldn't this be considered a crime of damaging the deceased body?" The mother-in-law continued to scream, "Everyone, help me to pull her away. Security, come quickly. Someone here is tampering with a corpse." As the security guard approached Kira, she spun around angrily glaring at everyone nearby. You're all plotting for wealth while causing a death." The security guard paused, but the mother-in-law seized the opportunity, rushing over and pulling at Kira's hair, trying to drag her away. Let go of my daughter-in-law. Don't touch her body. She couldn't let Rebecca be saved. Kira's scalp throbbed uncomfortably with a violent yanking of her hair, but it was a critical moment for the CPR, and she couldn't let go. She kept trying to revive Rebecca despite the distractions. Even as the mother-in-law pinched her over and over again, she didn't let up. Isla sneered. She found Kira really stupid. Being so kind-hearted would only get her embroiled in a huge problem. The mother and son were clearly not good people. She got herself mixed up in big trouble. At this moment, several luxury cars drove quickly into the parking lot of the hospital. Before the car could even stop, a tall man jumped out. Frankie Allen, with a stern look on his face, led a group of bodyguards in black suits, and they quickly rushed up to the floor. When Frankie rushed to the second floor, he immediately spotted his sister on the ground, receiving CPR. Rebecca was pale and weak, and the sight of her made his heart stop. This was a hospital. Why was such a primitive method of resuscitation being used? Where were the machines? Why weren't the machines being used? A flurry of questions raced through Frankie's mind as he saw a middle-aged woman beating the person performing CPR on his sister. She yanked at the woman's hair, bellowing, "Go away. My daughter-in-law doesn't need to be saved. Wouldn't it be better if she just passed peacefully? We can't afford her treatment. Are you trying to drive our family to bankruptcy?" Rebecca's husband also said, "The cost of treatment is $70,000 and the monthly medical fee is $10,000. I'm useless. Even if you bring my wife back, our family will still have to face this hardship. My brother-in-law's family isn't rich either, otherwise my wife wouldn't choose to give up." Frankie's face darkened. He wanted to kill those two people. He was in control of the Allen family, and he understood what was happening from just those sentences. His sister was pampered and spoiled since childhood, and any piece of jewelry from her room was worth more than $70,000. But now, she was getting killed by her husband and mother-in-law over that little amount of money. As he had this realization, he made his way to Rebecca without stopping. Rebecca's mother-in-law saw that Kira wouldn't move and noticed that Rebecca's hand twitched, indicating that she had been revived. The woman flew into a rage and tried to scratch Kira's face. She had long nails ready to disfigure Kira's face. Kira, detecting that Rebecca's heart had returned to a normal rhythm, as well as this elderly woman's intentions, quickly twisted her head and grabbed the woman's wrist while preparing to retaliate when, bang! An unknown man suddenly kicked the elderly woman's chest. The woman was kicked so hard that she tumbled backward, fell to the ground, and couldn't speak as she clutched her chest. The husband, seeing what happened, pointed at Frankie and yelled, "Who are you? This is too much. Not only did you torture my wife's corpse, but you even dared to lay hands on my mother. Call the police." "I'm calling the police." "Corpse." Frankie kicked the husband away and instructed his bodyguards coming up behind him, "Show them a lesson and call the police. Tell them that these two people have attempted to murder my sister for money." Leaving behind those words, he hastily rushed to Rebecca and crouched down. "Rebecca, I'm here. Wake up." Kira realized who he was and said in a calm voice, "Although her heartbeat is back, she still needs immediate surgery." "Thank you." On his way here, Frankie had already made arrangements with a doctor. He left those words and carried Rebecca away. When the police arrived, they quickly confirmed the mother and husband's intent to murder for money and immediately arrested the two. The crowd that had gathered was told the truth, and they all gave Kira a thumbs up. Kira stayed behind to provide a statement to the police. Once she had signed her statement, she turned to go, only to see Isla still behind her. Isla was frowning. She could see that the brother, who just arrived, clearly held a high social position. If she had known that earlier, she would have let that stupid woman make the call. It was all Kira's fault. She had stolen the spotlight again. Nonetheless, a mocking expression appeared in her eyes. "Kira, I didn't expect you would be so desperate to climb up the social ladder. Seeing that the infatuated woman was from an excellent background, you must have put so much effort into saving her. What a shame. After everything, that brother one didn't even give you a grateful glance." After making her mockery, she left for Mrs. Olson's ward. Kira watched her from behind, thinking back to how Isla had twisted the story around and how she was thinking only of personal gain now. She couldn't help but find Isla spiteful. For one, Rebecca was in critical condition, and her brother would definitely have brought her for surgery immediately. Secondly, Kira saved a life, but she didn't expect anything in return. She touched her scalp and gasped in pain. She had been pulled so hard by that elderly woman that it still hurt. She smoothed out her messy hair, sighed, pulled out her phone, and sent a message to Lewis before heading home. In the VIP ward on the third floor, Lewis thought back to what had happened in the car, and his heart beat faster. He frowned, suppressing his emergent feelings. He looked toward the door, but Kira still didn't appear. Was she also feeling shy? He frowned slightly at the thought. Also, it took over half an hour for him to receive a message from Kira on WhatsApp. Mr. Horton, something came up last minute. I'll be going home for the night. Upon receiving this message, Lewis strangely felt relieved, but he frowned involuntarily. What could be so important? Kira hailed a taxi home, took a bath, used a lot of conditioner on her hair, and finally managed to untangle it. Looking at the hair that had fallen, she felt a pang. Wasn't hair also iron-rich? She ate a portion of liver for dinner, replenishing some of the iron she had lost before taking out her laptop to continue with the unfinished work from the office. Nothing else happened that night. The next day, Kira arrived at the office early. She ran into Jalen at the office door. He'd gotten some sleep at home, and his dark circles had faded a lot. He was also less irritable. Seeing her come out of a taxi, he breathed a sigh of relief. I went home last night and kept thinking that something was off. My cousin drove you home, so did that mean that you guys are now living together? Thankfully, you didn't come to work with him this morning. Kira was speechless. She usually did come to work with Lewis, but she didn't bother explaining. Jalen walked to her side, glanced at her, and said proudly, I know why my cousin had a bad mood yesterday. I heard that he wanted to sign a contract with the Allen family, but the head of the Allen family, Frankie Allen, seems to have a bad relationship with my cousin. He's coming to the company to talk about business today, so my cousin must be feeling quite frustrated. Kira paused. Frankie Allen? What was the name of Rebecca's brother from the day before? She had missed Frankie when he came into the Horton Group, building accompanied by his secretary. Rebecca's surgery was very successful. She woke up this morning. Upon seeing her parents who had rushed overnight, the three cried together for a long time. Afterward, Rebecca asked about her savior. However, that young lady left the night before. Seeing his sister's anxiety, Frankie promised that he would find her savior and express their gratitude properly. He had personally witnessed the efforts this woman went through to save his sister, hence deemed that the Allen family owed this woman a life. He only wondered what that young woman did for a living. What did she work? As these thoughts were running in his head, he unexpectedly saw Kira, who was waiting for the elevator. Frankie was slightly surprised. The young woman he saw at the hospital the day before had her hair disheveled by Rebecca's mother-in-law, so he didn't get a clear look at her face. This young woman looked so much like her. Frankie picked up his speed, trying to approach her to confirm his speculation. However, just at that moment, the elevator arrived and Kira and Jalen entered it. By the time Frankie got there, he only saw the elevator doors slowly closing. What an unfortunate coincidence. Frankie wasn't in a hurry, for the young lady had left her phone number when she called him the night before. After the negotiations with the Horton Group were over, he could call her to express his gratitude. He could discuss a proper way to thank her with his family. Say, CHEWOE/OGOOOL. Kira didn't see Frankie. She went to the R&D department with Jalen. As soon as they entered the office, they saw their colleagues pulling their hair out in front of their computers. Tomorrow is Friday, and Vice President Horton is really making things difficult for us by asking us to submit the plan. I think we can give up now. This task is impossible for a human to complete. Jalen went home to sleep last night. Does that mean he has given up? I wonder how Mr. Olson is doing. Could you bring us a surprise? Luca immediately said, Don't say that. It'll put too much pressure on her. No matter how talented Kira is, she can't be compared to Drive South. Age is a factor. Everyone nodded in agreement. When they saw Kira and Jalen, The group immediately started gossiping excitedly. Jalen, did you meet Drive South at the gathering last night? Jalen rolled his eyes. How could Drive South possibly attend such a gathering? If he showed up, that bunch of people would eat him alive. Did you meet Mr. Morgan then? Did he say what Drive South is researching lately? No, he didn't. Riley suddenly looked at Kira. But we could ask Kira. She seems to be on good terms with him. What? Miss Olson, you actually know Samuel Morgan. That means you might as well know Drive South. Everyone looked at Kira together. Miss Olson, could you introduce us to Drive South if there's a chance in the future? Kira canned the group and saw their faces filled with joy and expectancy. She smiled faintly. Sure, we might even work together someday. Everyone burst out laughing at her words. Let us forget about that. I don't even dare to dream of it. I am content just to see Drive South in person. If we could get his guidance, it would be such a benefit. Tutu. Everyone laughed and talked, and finally, they began to work when Jalen started yelling angrily. Kira took her laptop to her own office. Before she entered, Jalen stopped her. Don't push yourself. The intensity of this project far exceeds our team's capability. Our superiors are aware of this. They won't let Jake hurt the team's morale. Listening to his words of comfort, Kira smiled. Don't worry. Trust me. Jake stood outside the office, gazing at Kira. She had beautiful features, and the confident and bright smile on her face reminded him of her university days. It seemed like any hardship could be easily overcome in her presence. But where did her confidence come from? Apart from Drive South, no one could complete such an arduous task in such a short time. He turned around, walked to the resting area, and called Isla on his cell phone. Before tomorrow, can Drive South send me the solution? Isla tried to stall. Jake, Drive South is very busy. He's abroad, Jake said irritably. If you keep stalling, Kira Olson and the others will solve the problem. Isla sounded a little panic-stricken. I'll tell him to hurry up. Jake narrowed his eyes abruptly. Isla, you're not lying to me, are you? Of course not. I'll go and talk to Drive South now. Isla hung up and became frantic. These 2 days, she had been using Mrs. Olson's email to send Drive South messages, but his replies were ruthless, saying that he was on a business trip and not to be disturbed. She wouldn't be able to provide a solution by the following day. When Jake saw that she had lost her value, he might call off the engagement. No, she absolutely couldn't allow that to happen. Determination suddenly flashed across her eyes, and she entered the ward to see Mrs. Olson. Mom, do you know the Allens from Clance? Jake wants to make contact with them. Mrs. Olson's condition had been stable for the past few days, and she was ready to be discharged the following day. She had been reading a book in bed. Upon hearing Isla's words, her fingers tightened, but then she looked up and said, No. Isla's eyes flickered. Mrs. Olson's reaction clearly hinted that she knew the Allens, but didn't want to introduce Isla to them. Isla decided this selfish woman wasn't fit to be a mother. She wasn't like Poppy, who had always indulged her since childhood. Now that Mrs. Olson was unwilling to help her, what should she do? Isla was truly in a panic. Kira didn't work on the entire project on her own. Her colleagues in Group 1 helped a lot. By the time they clocked out, the general plan was almost determined and just needed a bit more refinement. Kira brought her laptop to the underground parking lot. After getting into Lewis's Bentley, she noticed that he wasn't in the car. The driver explained, Mr. Horton has an appointment tonight. He told me to send you home first. Kira didn't think much of it. All right. However, Lewis didn't come back the whole night. The next day, Kira brought the plan that she worked on overnight with her to work, full of excitement. As soon as she arrived in the research department, she saw Jake standing in the rest area with a cup of coffee, clearly waiting for her. Just a friendly reminder, Kira, today is the last day. If you don't submit the solution before the end of work, I win our bet, and you'll have to take responsibility for what you said. Kira didn't know what to say. Did this man have nothing to do all day? She rolled her eyes and walked to her office, but Jake followed her. If you work for me in the future, I won't treat you badly. At least I can introduce you to Drive South. Kira scoffed. Don't bother, Jake said angrily. I know you've got on good terms with Samuel Morgan and think you don't need my help, But do you think he'll introduce Drive South to you? He just takes you as a plaything. If he had any real feelings for you, he would have helped you solve the problem. I don't need help. Jake laughed. Really? Other people praise you as a genius, and you really begin to compare yourself to Drive South, thinking you can come up with a solution. My solution is already complete. Kira's laughing eyes were full of irony. On the other hand, Vice President Horton, did you get Dr. South's solution yet? Enhance. Jake exclaimed in shock. You've finished it? How is that possible? Having graduated in the field of energy, he was well aware of the complexity involved in the work. That's why he didn't find it odd when Isla said that Drive South needed more time and hadn't yet given him the solution. How on earth could Kira have finished so quickly? Kira narrowed her eyes. I'll organize everything and send it to you later, and you'll know. Jake, don't forget what you promised me. After saying this, she entered Group 1's office. As soon as she walked in, members of her group surrounded her. Luca, being vigilant, glared at Jake. Kira, did he belittle you again with Dr. South? Say, CHEWOEOOL? The rest of the members immediately chimed in. Miss Olson, don't take him seriously. Exactly, being so competent at your age already makes you top-notch. Don't compare yourself with Drive South. You're already amazing. You're so young, yet you're more impressive than anyone else here. Jalen came out of his office. From the looks of it, he must have stayed over at the company again the night before. He frowned and looked at Kira. Don't worry, I stayed up all night and figured out a rough solution to the problem. If we work extra time today, even if we can't provide a complete solution, at least a suggestion is enough. He had also sent a WhatsApp message to his cousin, explaining the situation in the R&D department. Regarding Jake's pressure on the department, Jalen knew that Lewis would support him. Kira was touched by their kind words. She smiled. Thank you, but it's not necessary. I've already finished it. Jalen waved his hand. You don't have to worry about this anymore. I'll talk to. What? His eyes widened in surprise. You finished? The others also looked at her in disbelief. Miss Olson, what did you just say? Am I hallucinating from fatigue? Luca laughed bitterly. Kira, don't joke around with us. Kira laughed. I'm about to send an email, and I'll CC everyone. She walked in her office with her laptop. The department members and Jalen stood there, looking at each other, still in disbelief. It wasn't until the sound of a new email pinged from someone's computer that everyone returned to their desks and opened their email. Sure enough, they saw an email sent by Kira. Everyone immediately downloaded the attachments and opened them. The content left them stunned. For a moment, the department went quiet. Seeing everyone engrossed in reading the solution, Kira quietly left the office and headed to the rooftop. With her work completed, she intended to meet Lewis to retrieve the book on neurology. She hadn't forgotten about making the medicine for old Mrs. Horton. Rooftop inside the office. Lewis was reviewing some documents when Tom entered abruptly. Boss, Miss Olson is here to see you. He paused, the pen leaving a trail on the paper. At the small of his back, it felt like he could still feel her soft touch, which slowly turned into burning heat. He moistened his lips, his voice deep. Enter. As soon as Kira entered, she saw Lewis sitting quietly there. He didn't look up and said softly, I know about the research and development department. It's all right if you guys can't find a solution. The company has a complete set of rules and regulations that will protect your legal rights. Kira laughed. I didn't come here because of the R&D department's issues. I came here because I was thinking about you. Her voice trailed off, and a sudden itch in her throat made her pause. Lewis's hand shook, ruining a document that had just been printed. His throat tightened a little. He slowly looked up and saw Kira clearing her throat before speaking again. I was thinking about your book, the one from the library. Lewis was speechless. He took a deep breath, but felt a little desolate deep down. He casually picked up that book from his desk and handed it to Kira. When she took it, he said lightly, Next time, don't stop in the middle of your sentence. Kira happily took the book, oblivious to his strange remark, and said casually, Right, thank you. She then turned to leave. Only after she had left the room did Louis drop his gaze. He laughed softly. Interestingly, Kira hadn't taken the kiss in the car to heart while he had been overthinking it for 2 days. He was overreacting. What's more, Kira already had a boyfriend. Louis regained his usual calm and composure. Now that the R&D work was completed, Kira completely let go and spent the whole day researching Alzheimer's disease. As it approached clock-off time, the quiet office finally stirred. The director of the R&D department and an angry Jake walked in. Jalen had just finished verifying Kira's solution and found no problems at all. He excitedly informed the director, "Our company really struck gold this time. Kira's solution will be as good as Drive South's." The director frowned, while Jake snorted. "Yeah, you're right. They're identical." At first, Jalen didn't catch his meaning. She's as good as Drive South." As he said this, he suddenly froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean, she stole Drive South's solution." After Jake finished speaking, he sneered at Kira. "In the afternoon, I received Drive South's solution, and it's almost identical to yours. I wonder how you seemed so composed. And it turns out you had this in mind. Did you think that because you sent your email earlier than Drive South, the solution will be considered yours? Kira Olsen, you're incredibly naive to think that by changing a few details we wouldn't be able to tell. How dare you steal from Dr. South?" Jalen frowned. "There must be some misunderstanding here. Kira has been working in the company with us all these days. Some of the content was even completed by us, even though this part only accounted for 20% of the entire solution." Upon hearing this, Jake immediately responded, "What kind of misunderstanding? The two solutions are identical. Do you mean to say that rather than Kira stealing from Drive South stole from Kira? Do you think that's possible? One was a respected doctoral scholar, and the other was an undergraduate. It was clear who was more trustworthy." Jalen was rendered speechless. Kira frowned as she listened to their conversation. It was unlikely Drive South would have sent an email to Jake, so the only explanation was that someone had forged her solution to seem as if it had come from Drive South. Jake intended to use this opportunity to suppress her and her team. Was that it? What a joke, Kira said mildly. Couldn't there be a third possibility? The director was slightly stunned. What third possibility? However, Jake rebuked sternly. Kira, stop making excuses here. I advise you to admit your mistakes obediently. The company may be lenient in punishing you for your first offense. Jalen immediately turned his eyes to her. Kira, explain to us. What exactly is going on? Kira answered, the third possibility is that Drive South plan never arrived at Jake's hand. He's slandering me. Upon hearing this, Jalen glared angrily at Jake. Jake, however, seemed surprised at her response. He chuckled and said, when we were in school, I didn't realize you had such a thick skin. Of course, I wouldn't accuse you without solid evidence. Jalen asked, what evidence? Jake pulled out his phone, opened a screenshot, and handed it to Jalen. This is the plan that Drive South sent to Isla last night. Isla was delayed due to an issue and forwarded it to me in the afternoon. From the timing, Drive South's submission was earlier than Kira's. If that is not enough to clarify things, I have a witness. Kira narrowed her eyes. It turned out that the culprit wasn't Jake, but Isla. She thought back carefully. Last night, after work, she passed by the second floor of the inpatient department. At that time, Mrs. Olsen went in for an examination, and Isla had a stomach ache. So, Kira went with Mrs. Olsen instead. At that time, Kira's computer was left in the ward. But how could Isla know her computer's password? Kira clenched her fists slightly. Nothing to say now, is there? With a cold laugh, Jake said to the general manager, this incident is absolutely appalling. The company must deal strictly with Kira. If necessary, we can call the police. After all, she dared to steal Drive South's research. If Drive South hears about this, I'm afraid he'll never work with Horton Group again. The general manager hastily spoke. This scandal is also harmful to the company. Let's hold off on reporting it to the police. The administrative department has already left for the day. How about this? First thing Monday morning, we'll submit all the evidence to the administrative department to see what they decide to do. Jake didn't object. He looked at Kira and said suggestively, "Spend the next 2 days thinking hard. If you realize your mistake, you can come to me. If your apology is sincere, I may consider not publicizing this matter and treat it as a minor blunder. But of course, if you don't repent, don't blame me for not considering our past as classmates." Having dropped this hint, he and the general manager strode off. Once the two men had left, the members of Group 1 gathered around Kira. "There must be some misunderstanding here. Miss Olson, did you ask Samuel Morgan for help?" Kira was touched that the team didn't blame her. "Don't worry. I'll prove my innocence." If she revealed her true identity and explained the situation, all the misunderstandings would be cleared up. However, Jalen didn't believe her the last time. The patent certificate and company seal that could prove her identity had been taken abroad by Samuel for a project. It seemed he would return next Monday. Thinking about this, she smiled and looked at her colleagues around her. By that time, their expressions would surely be humorous. After leaving work, Kira went to the underground parking lot. She got into the Bentley, but didn't see Lewis. However, Tom was in the passenger seat. "Mr. Horton has a meeting to attend to. He'll leave later." Kira immediately said, "I can take a taxi." "You don't have to. Mr. Horton told me to drop you off first." After Tom instructed the driver to start the car, he glanced at her, dissatisfied. "Miss Olson, you shouldn't rush things in your line of work. Drive South is not someone you can interfere with casually. You created quite a stir in the R&D department." Kira raised an eyebrow in response, but remained silent. Tom continued, "Don't think that being protected by old Mrs. Horton and the boss allows you to do anything you want. In the field of research, theft and plagiarism are the most intolerable." Kira pulled out her earphones, put them in her ears, and blocked out his voice. Tom was speechless. The car soon arrived at the hospital. As Kira was climbing up the stairs, she was stopped by Taylor on the second floor. "Shirley wants to see you." She followed Taylor to Mrs. Olson's ward. Mrs. Olson was about to be discharged, and Aunt South had already packed her things but hadn't left. They were obviously waiting for Kira. Mrs. Olson saw her come in and immediately asked, "Kira, what's this about you stealing Drive South's plan? I don't believe that's something you would do." Taylor disdainfully said, "With the evidence now at hand, Jake only gave her a warning because she's part of the Olson family. What's there to not believe? Surely, you trust her too much. I've said long ago that with the blood of Poppy Hill running through her veins, she can't be a good person." Mrs. Olson shouted angrily, "Shut up. Kira, speak up. What's going on?" Mrs. Olson's worried expression made Kira's eyes a little moist. She knew that Mrs. Olson genuinely cared about her. Just as she was about to speak up, Isla acted as if she had been wronged. "Kira, how could you be so foolish? I know you want to achieve something at Horton Group to earn more respect from old Mrs. Horton and Mr. Horton, but you can't just take whatever you want. If you want to drive South's plan, you could have told me, and I would have given it to you. How could you steal it from my computer?" "Steal?" Kira let out a cold chuckle. As expected, Isla was behind everything. Taking a step forward, she asked, "Who's the one who took things without asking?" Isla put on a wrong face. "What do you mean? Are you trying to have me cover up for you? Or should tell people that your plan is the same as Drive South's, and everything is just a coincidence?" Kira calmly responded, "Of course it's not a coincidence. You obviously stole my plan." "Nonsense." Taylor became so furious that he picked up a broom from the floor and started hitting her. "You made a mistake, and now you're trying to throw dirt on your sister? You deserve a beating." Mrs. Olson immediately stopped him. "Taylor, don't be so reckless." Taylor yelled, "Shirley, did you hear that? She's so arrogant. An undergraduate student is claiming that such a complex plan from Drive South is hers. It's just a joke, utterly ridiculous. She's simply not worth your concern. She'll have to bear the consequences of her own evil deeds." "However," Mrs. Olson said, "but if Horton Group calls the police, Kira could end up in jail." She took out her phone. "It's really quite simple to deal with this matter. As long as Drive South doesn't pursue it, it will be fine. I'll call South right now." With that, she dialed Drive South through WhatsApp voice call. Kira instinctively took out her cell phone. She didn't really want to make a scene with Isla in front of Mrs. Olson. Even if the truth came out on Monday through others, it would be better than having a face-to-face argument now. Mostly, she was afraid that Mrs. Olson would get too agitated, which might affect her health. But now that Mrs. Olson had called, she didn't need to keep Isla's secret anymore. Just as the call came in, Isla rushed up to Mrs. Olson and immediately hung up the phone. "Mom, no." Mrs. Olson was stunned. She frowned and looked at her. "Why not?" Isla bit her lip. "I just spoke with Jake, and he suggested that we shouldn't blow this issue out of proportion and handle it internally. If Drive South were to find out, even if he doesn't blame Kira, the Horton Group has to show some form of punishment as an apology to Drive South, which may lead to a more severe punishment." Mrs. Olson paused slightly. "Is that so?" "Yes." Isla looked at Kira, a flicker of cunning light in her eyes. "Kira, you were found guilty with full evidence, and you've offended Drive South. It would be best for you to apologize promptly and submit a sincere letter of apology to the company. Then I won't pursue your responsibility, and Mr. Horton will surely be lenient with you on behalf of the Horton Group." As soon as he heard this, Taylor said, "Shirley, did you hear that? Nothing serious will happen to Kira. You just worry too much about everything." Kira was silent, her gaze lowered to her own phone. If she were to call back now, the truth would be clear, but would Mrs. Olson be able to accept it? Mrs. Olson was such a pure and upright person. She only wanted her children to be healthy and honest and never to go astray. Could she accept that her own daughter was actually a devious person? Kira remained silent for a while and finally looked at Mrs. Olson. She decided to lay the groundwork first. "Mrs. Olson, I'm not that stupid. It wouldn't be a big deal even if I couldn't complete the project. I have no need to steal Drive South solutions just to save face. Besides, have you ever thought about something? Did Drive South agree to provide technical support to the Horton Group?" At her words, Mrs. Olson pursed her lips. Isla interjected, "I've already explained this to Mom. I took her phone and called Drive South without her knowledge, and he has already agreed." Just as Kira wanted to refute, Taylor berated in rage. "Kira, you're unrepentant. It was all in vain that Shirley cared so much about you. Isla has decided not to hold you accountable, and yet you still dare to try and pin it on your sister." He motioned toward the door. "Get out." Kira gave Mrs. Olson a long look, seeing the latter frown slightly, clearly not believing her. Kira sighed, turned around, and left the room. Her words would give Mrs. Olson more room to think, and they could also serve as a buffer. When the truth came to light on Monday, hopefully, Mrs. Olson won't be too emotionally affected. As Kira left the room, she heard movement behind her. Turning around, she saw Isla rushing after her. Isla's eyes flickered. "Kira, the Horton Group doesn't really want to blow this out of proportion. I suggest you consider leaving voluntarily. That way, this whole thing will be over." Kira chuckled. Isla had stolen her solution, and now she definitely wanted to calm things down quickly. In a cold manner, she stated, "We both know who stole whose solutions. There's no need for hypocrisy here." Hearing this, Isla lifted her chin in satisfaction. "Of course you stole mine. There's plenty of evidence. You have no chance to deny it." Seeing Isla with no guilt in her eyes, Kira responded, "You think you've covered your tracks?" A cold glint appeared in Isla's eyes. "Are you referring to Drive South? Do you expect Drive South to confront this issue himself?" "Kira, you're so naive. This minor issue won't bother Drive South." The implication was that Drive South was completely unaware of this situation, nor would anyone bring it up with him. Kira had no choice but to carry this blame. If Kira wasn't Drive South herself, she might have been put in a passive position. Kira smiled. "Isla, when you walk on a dark road too many times, you're bound to encounter ghosts." Leaving this behind, she walked away. The smile on Isla's face gradually faded until all that was left was spite. Lewis was really in a meeting. After the meeting ended at 8 in the evening, he walked out of the conference room and happened to see a sneaky figure standing nearby. It was Jalen. When he heard the conference room door open, he came over. "Lewis, I have a favor to ask." Lewis didn't stop, but walked toward the elevator. "Go on." Jalen glanced around to make sure the other executives at the meeting were at a safe distance. He then briefly relayed the situation in the research and development department. In the end, he pleaded, Kira just graduated and might have lost her way trying to make some achievements. Anyway, the company didn't suffer any losses. Could you perhaps handle this leniently? Lewis entered the elevator and pressed the button for the underground car park. Seeing that Lewis wasn't responding, Jalen continued, Lewis, I've never asked you for a favor before, but Kira is an invaluable talent. I really can't bear to see her cut short her career. Lewis gave him a cold glance, his deep eyes devoid of warmth. You think she stole it? Jalen stood there, stunned. Ding! The elevator arrived. Lewis strode out and headed straight for his car. Through the rear-view mirror, Tom saw his boss's expression and cautiously asked, Boss, you think Kira didn't steal it? But if that's the case, did Drive South steal from her? Lewis looked up and glanced at him, but said nothing. Tom muttered to himself, You do seem to trust her quite a bit. Lewis leaned back in his seat, lost in his thoughts. It wasn't that he trusted her, but there was an inherent pride in her that made him sure that she wouldn't steal, nor would she need to. As for why her solution was the same as Drive South's, was it because of Samuel Morgan? He remembered that Kira had a boyfriend, and the two were in a hurry to get married. Was that man Samuel? The car soon arrived at the hospital. Lewis got out of the car and strode into the building, just as he saw Kira coming over. The lights in the corridor were dim, and most of the people were wearing striped patient gowns and looked worn out. Only Kira had a fair complexion. Her casual gait radiated a sense of vitality, as if she were the only scenery in this hospital. Lewis's expression unconsciously softened. The two met at the entrance to old Mrs. Horton's ward. Lewis didn't enter the room, but asked indifferently, Need any help? Kira paused slightly and smiled, No. Lewis's voice suddenly turned cold. You don't need my help. So are you going to Samuel? Well, I admit I overstepped. Kira nodded. I do need his help. He can better verify my identity. At her words, Lewis paused and asked, Your identity? Lewis narrowed his eyes. What identity? As Samuel Morgan's girlfriend? At this moment, he pieced everything together in his mind. Kira wouldn't steal the plan, and the solution was too complicated. Jalen said that no one but Drive South could complete it in such a short time, so Kira's plan must have been provided by Samuel. But Samuel didn't inform Drive South. Otherwise, Drive South wouldn't have sent it separately to Jake, causing this misunderstanding. The business world was complicated. Why did Samuel take Drive South's plan without notifying him? Would he really clarify things for Kira? Lewis asked uneasily. Are you sure he'll come? Of course. You trust him that much? Yes. When had Samuel ever dared to disobey Kira's orders? Her matter-of-fact attitude suddenly made Lewis feel a little frustrated. He only found her infatuated with love. Suddenly, he reminded her, Miss Olson, don't forget we're still husband and wife legally. I don't want to start any rumors. Kira was perplexed. She looked at him with slight confusion, not understanding why he would suddenly say this. Seeing this, Lewis felt more frustrated. He loosened his tie and said sternly, While our marriage is still legal, I hope you behave yourself. Leaving these words, he strode into the ward. Kira didn't know what to say. Did this man have an unsuccessful meeting today? How temperamental. His words were utterly nonsensical. She didn't think too much about it, but followed him into the ward and went to accompany old Mrs. Horton. Outside the suite, Lewis instructed Tom, Look up Samuel Morgan's information. Yes, Tom worked very efficiently. Within half an hour, he gathered all the information about Samuel. Boss, it's sent to your phone. Lewis opened the file on his phone and saw Samuel's basic information. He was 27 years old, a brilliant student who graduated from Cambridge University. 3 years ago, he became Drive South's agent, managing his company. In the past 3 years, he had been diligent and steady, and the company was now preparing to go public. Lewis continued to scroll down, but found no more information. He frowned slightly. That's it. Tom was bewildered. He had even found Samuel's university transcripts, and the boss still felt it wasn't enough. He asked with confusion, Do you want? Lewis said lightly. His personal life. 2-2. Tom's mouth dropped open in surprise, but he soon recovered. I'll check it. Right away. Half an hour later, Tom sent the information to Lewis's mobile phone. Samuel was generous and went through girlfriends every 3 months. His ex-girlfriends had nothing but praise for him. At present, he was involved with several women, clearly not an ideal boyfriend. Thinking about Kira's trust in him, Lewis chuckled. He took his phone and walked into the ward, prepared to show her this evidence. But as soon as he walked in, he saw his grandmother flipping through the dictionary with her reading glasses, and Kira squatted on the ground, playing with the dog. The little puppy raised its head, wagging its tail vigorously at her. Kira was smiling all over her face. She was incredibly beautiful. Her smile was breathtaking, as if she was the purest scenery in the world, making people not want to destroy it. He paused, and his fingers tightened around his phone. Should he tell her this cruel truth? For a moment, Lewis was conflicted. What's wrong? Old Mrs. Horton suddenly asked, looking at him suspiciously. Lewis pressed his lips together and quickly turned off his phone. Nothing. However, old Mrs. Horton didn't believe him. You've been staring at your wife for so long. How could there be nothing? Do you have something to say to her? Upon hearing this, Kira looked up, her eyes shining as she looked at him. Lewis was speechless. He felt a wave of heat rush up to his face, so he quickly averted his gaze and cleared his throat. You seem quite lively, Granny. Are you ready to be discharged from the hospital? Upon hearing those words, the energetic old Mrs. Horton immediately clutched her chest, putting on a weak face. You brat, my chest still hurts. How could she let the young couple live together once she was discharged? She would be like a child of divorced parents, having to choose one side. Unlike now, on the second day of her stay, she remodeled the ward. She put 2 comfortable beds in the ward, one for her and one for her granddaughter-in-law, and a sofa bed in the outer living room for the brat to sleep. It might be a bit small, and life was somewhat hard, but at least the 2 of them could see each other daily. When they developed feelings for each other, she would bring her granddaughter-in-law back to the Horton family. Thinking of this, old Mrs. Horton laughed. There was no sign of chest discomfort at all. Lewis was speechless. So was Kira. That night passed without any event. The next morning, Kira was reading a book on neurology when she suddenly received a call from Luca Barker. Kira, come to the university now. Something happened to Professor Miller. Kira frowned and said, sure. She stood up solemnly, walking quickly toward the exit. As she went down the stairs, she prepared to hail a cab. Behind her, Tom's voice rang out. Miss Olson, Mr. Horton asked me to give you a ride. Kira paused slightly and didn't refuse. Ocean Ion University, thank you. As soon as the car stopped at the academic building, Kira jumped out and rushed toward Professor Miller's office. The door to the office was wide open, with a group of students gathering around for the spectacle. Kira rushed in and saw a red-faced Professor Miller standing there, aggressively looking at the Dean of the College of Energy. He snapped, a student's academic status affects their life. You can't just expel them on a whim. Last time you said her character was problematic and her background was problematic, so you directly canceled her postgraduate recommendation without my agreement. Today, if you don't give me a reasonable reason, you can't leave here. Kira heard this and paused for a moment. She thought something happened to Professor Miller. Was he standing up for her, but expelled? She looked at the dean, just in time to hear his strict words. I just received the news that she stole Drive South Solution and claimed it was her idea. This kind of student tarnishes our school's reputation. Of course, we have to deal with it. Professor Miller growled angrily. That's impossible. Kira isn't that kind of person. The dean sneered. This is the internal information I just received. It can't be false. We're about to hire Drive South as a professor, and if we don't punish her, how can we gain Drive South's trust? Do you know how many schools are fighting over him? Professor Miller understood right away. So you're doing this all for Drive South. But I'm her advisor. I won't sign off on your decision to expel her. I'll never sign that document. The dean was furious. Miller, how can you be so stubborn? Comparing Kira Olson with Drive South is ludicrous. And even you aren't important enough. Hearing this, Kira stepped forward. Without Professor Miller, there will be no Dr. South. Kira wasn't lying. When she was a freshman, she found her major very uninteresting until she took a class with Professor Miller. That was when she decided to pursue this path. One could say that Professor Miller was her guiding light. Her emphatic words silenced the entire office. Both Professor Miller and the dean looked at her. The dean furrowed his brows and said angrily, "What nonsense are you talking about?" As Kira was about to reveal her true identity, Luca, who stood beside her, rushed in front of her. What Kira said was right. "Without pioneers like my professor, where would Drive South be today?" he shouted. "New energy research has only developed in recent years, but my professor has been studying it for over 20 years. Without him and other professors laying the groundwork, how could we possibly have today's achievements?" "Dean, the words you just said were utterly biased. Even if Drive South were here, he should address our professor as a senior." The dean choked on his words and glanced at the students by the door. Many of them were Professor Miller's postgraduate students, and they were all looking at him indignantly. The dean cleared his throat. "Indeed, my earlier comments were inappropriate. However, Drive South standing in the field is unshakable, and this should be clear to everyone. Drive South can form an entire research team independently, which significantly advances the development of new energy. So, Kira Olsen, how could you steal his plans?" "This is absurd." Kira responded, "I didn't." The dean sneered. "The Horton Group has all the evidence and witnesses. Even if you don't plead guilty now, you can't escape. Kira Olsen, since you're here, it saves me the trouble of summoning you. You've been expelled from the university. I'll publish an announcement shortly, so your disgraceful actions don't tarnish the reputation of the school further." Professor Miller shouted angrily, "Dean, Kira Olsen has already said she didn't steal. The matter is still under investigation, and your reason for expelling her is completely insufficient." The dean glanced at him. "We must keep this matter under wraps to avoid giving people the wrong impression that Drive South cannot tolerate a student. The official reason for expelling Kira Olsen is disciplinary violation. As far as I know, she is chronically late, skips plenty of classes, and often scores 0 on assignments. This is why the school has decided to expel her." Hearing this, Kira was really stunned. It's often said that a university experience without skipping classes wouldn't be perfect. Which student hadn't skipped an occasional class? She certainly skipped many classes as the content taught by the professors was too basic, so she simply didn't attend. However, when the professors discovered that she got perfect scores in exams, but 0 on regular assignments, since it didn't affect her overall performance, they didn't pursue it further. Who would have thought that this would now be used as leverage against her? Kira's demeanor turned cold. Professor Miller, shaking with rage, retorted, "You are utterly shameless. I'll say it again, I won't sign this document. Kira Olsen is my student, and without my signature as her advisor, you have no way of expelling her." The dean's face darkened. "Professor Miller, you are blatantly stubborn. Since you aren't cooperating with the school's decision, I'll have no choice but to suspend you." Professor Miller exploded. "Suspend me if you wish. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" At these words, the dean laughed. "Professor Miller, suppose you're suspended, your postgraduate students will have nobody to guide them temporarily. How do you plan to handle their graduation defenses? Let me see. You have 6 postgraduate students, right? So, are you planning to delay them all by 1 year? If a postgraduate student failed their defense, graduation would be postponed by 1 year. Many unscrupulous advisors, in a bid to have their students continue helping them, would deliberately fail them, causing the students to delay graduation year after year. In this respect, the students were always the disadvantaged group." At these words, Professor Miller was taken aback. You are absolutely despicable." The dean was actually using his postgraduate students to force him to sign the document. Being a career researcher, he wasn't used to cursing others. At this moment, he could only stomp his feet in fury. Professor Miller's postgraduate students, on the other hand, immediately turned pale, and they all looked at him anxiously. The dean, however, laughed. "Professor Miller, what is more important, 1 student or 6? The choice is yours." He took out the expulsion form and handed it to Professor Miller. "Are you going to sign this or not?" Professor Miller clenched his fists. He turned to look at his postgraduate students. Some of them had already secured jobs and were waiting to receive their graduation certificate to start working. Some were engaged and were waiting to get married after graduation. However, he couldn't sign the form. What was black couldn't be turned into white. He was at a loss on how to face his postgraduate students. Kira stepped forward and asked, "Are the senior officials here today?" Professor Miller shook his head with a bitter smile. "They're all at a conference in Clance, including the school principal and vice principal." It meant that there was nobody present who could reprimand the dean. Kira looked down and suddenly smiled. "Professor, how about you take a few days off at home? We'll discuss this when they return." If she exposed her identity now, the dean would simply dismiss it as a misunderstanding, and the matter would be swept under the rug, especially as no actual injury had been done. But if the dean pressured the professor into taking a leave of absence and took action against his postgraduate students, exposing everything after that would mean the dean's downfall. After hearing this, Professor Miller sighed deeply, looked at his postgraduate students, and reassured them. "Don't worry. Even if I'm suspended, I'll wait for the return of the principal and the vice principal, and I'll appeal to them. I won't delay your graduation." Kira then added, "Professor, you can consider it as taking a few days off for yourself. I'll have an answer for you on Monday." Upon hearing this, the postgraduate students looked ashen-faced. They understood the professor's choice since he was always the fair and impartial type. Yet they were involved out of nowhere, and the instigator was telling the professor so carelessly to take a few days off. It made them all feel very uncomfortable. Luca immediately stepped forward and tugged at Kira. "Kira, if you don't know what to say, just remain silent." Kira was perplexed. She personally escorted Professor Miller home. On the way, Professor Miller expressed his concern. "Kira, how are you going to deal with the Horton Group? Just the reputation of Drive South alone could crush you. Who would believe you? Why would such a high-profile professor like him want to steal your solution?" In Professor Miller's eyes, a conflict between his brilliant student and Drive South must mean that the latter was shameless enough to steal Kira's research findings. But when he asked this, Kira just laughed. "Professor, Drive South didn't steal my solution." Professor Miller was taken aback. "Then who really did this study?" "Me," Kira said indifferently, "or you can say it was done by Drive South." Kira sent Professor Miller home and then returned to the hospital. She spent most of her time in the hospital with old Mrs. Horton in her ward. Lewis was working in the outer office. Tom stood beside him, quietly recounting the events at the university, and then whispered, "Miss Olson's cold demeanor has caused a stir. They're criticizing her on the school's internal network." After that, he handed his cell phone to Lewis. The incident had become a hot topic on the internal network of Ocean Ion University, and everyone was discussing it. "I don't get it. Why would Professor Miller defend such a loser? She stole Drive South's study. Of course, we should expel her. What's the point of keeping her? She's just stirring up trouble." I totally agree with you. There were those who cursed her regarding this incident, and there were also those who condemned her for other things. The theft hasn't been proven yet, and it's understandable that Professor Miller wants to protect her. I was at the scene at the time, and I respect Professor Miller's actions. But that doesn't stop me from hating a certain classmate. Professor Miller made a sacrifice for her, and she has no gratitude, even saying that the professor should go home and take a few days off. It's cold-blooded and ruthless, as if Professor Miller's sacrifices were taken for granted. I was also at the scene, and I feel this person is too thick-skinned. Those graduate students of Professor Miller are really unlucky to have the same tutor with her. The more Lewis read, the darker his expression became, and by the end, he looked gloomy. He tossed the phone back to Tom. I just remembered a quote from Carlo Collodi. "When the village dog barks, the rest of the dogs follow, even though they don't know why they're barking." Tom didn't know what to say. What a sharp tongue. He was comparing those foolish and naive college students to dogs. Tom subconsciously said, "If Miss Olson sees these criticisms, she might feel hurt, right?" As soon as he said this, Lewis hesitated and asked tentatively, "Do you think she would bother to read the university's internal network?" Tom smirked. Boss, Miss Olson just graduated. At her age, who wouldn't check the school network for gossip? Lewis said indifferently, I don't. Tom thought, that's because you act like an old man, completely insulated from the internet. He cleared his throat. Young people these days like to go online. Lewis raised his head upon hearing this and looked through the glass window on the door into the ward. The weather was gradually getting colder. Kira wore a camel-colored shirt and was casually leaning back on the couch reading a book. Strands of loose hair fell onto her forehead. She tucked the strands behind her ear. Through the curtain of thick black hair, he could see a part of her slender, fair neck. She was focused and serious. The sunlight fell onto the floor by her feet, where the puppy was curled up, sound asleep. The scene painted a picture of peace and tranquility. After a while, Kira seemed to be getting a bit tired. She put down her book, stretched, and began to reach for her phone. Lewis abruptly stood up and strode to the door in a few steps, opening it. Both people in the room looked at him in unison. Old Mrs. Horton adjusted her reading glasses and looked at him bemusedly. Brat, what is it? Lewis pursed his lips and looked at Kira. Miss Olson, it's nice outside today. Would you like to take my grandmother out to get some sun? Kira glanced outside and nodded. She gently nudged the puppy to wake it up, then helped old Mrs. Horton out the door. Taking two out at once would save some time. The three of them soon arrived at the hospital park, found a chair, and helped old Mrs. Horton to sit down. Kira stared absent-mindedly at the lake in the distance. She was trying to digest the knowledge about neurology she had just read. Suddenly, a low voice came into her ear. Miss Olson, do you often go online? Kira looked at Lewis, puzzled. Lewis dressed in black today, and his custom-fitted clothes highlighted his cool demeanor and restrained elegance. He wasn't looking at her, his expression aloof. It seemed like it was just idle small talk. Kira gave a nonchalant answer. I don't really like it. Lewis nodded. Kira then turned to look at old Mrs. Horton. After several days, she now knew Lewis better. He was a man of few words, so after that small talk, he probably wouldn't say anything more. Just as she was thinking about this, she heard him speak again. Nowadays, many people are restless. Under the anonymity of the internet, they like to vent their anger and dissatisfaction. The internet is like a lawless place, amplifying the evil in people's hearts. You don't have to take what's on the internet to heart. Kira was perplexed. Just as she was wondering why he was suddenly saying these things, her phone vibrated. She took a quick look. It was a WhatsApp message from Luca. Kira, don't visit the university network for a while. A group of students are just echoing each other, and their words are too harsh. Kira was a little surprised. She seemed to understand why Lewis was saying those things. She put down her phone, a bright smile blooming on her face. Mr. Horton, don't worry. The words on the internet can't hurt me. Lewis was a little embarrassed before returning to his usual self. Well, I was only afraid it might affect my grandmother's mood. Kira laughed softly. Her laughter made Lewis uncomfortable, so he stood up, his expression still calm. I still have work to do. I'll leave my grandmother in your care. All right. Back in the ward, Lewis said, cancel the Monday morning meeting. Tom was surprised. But that's when we have our multinational meeting. Okay, I'll cancel it right away. He gave Lewis a doubtful look. Was Lewis planning to go to the administrative department on Monday to openly defend Kira? He felt uneasy. After Lewis Horton took over the Horton Group, there were many who were dissatisfied. If he were to bend the rules for personal reasons, Tom suddenly felt irritated. Kira just joined the company a few days ago, and she had caused such a big problem for his boss. Jake relied on Drive South to gain a foothold in the R&D department. Now, she has crossed Drive South. She really was good at stirring up trouble for his boss. If Lewis really intended to protect her this Monday, Tom decided that even if he would make Lewis angry, he would stop his boss. He couldn't let his boss make a mistake. When Kira returned from her walk with the old lady, she found that Tom was looking at her strangely. But she didn't pay much attention. It was soon Monday. After breakfast, as Kira was preparing to go to the Horton Group, her phone vibrated. It was a WhatsApp message from Samuel Morgan. Boss, the plane landed on time. I'm about to go to the Horton Group. Kira and Lewis arrived at the Horton Group in his Bentley. As they got out of the car, Lewis suddenly asked, will Samuel Morgan arrive on time? Kira replied, I think so. Lewis pursed his lips and continued. Actually, I have some information about Samuel Morgan. I'll tell you after we deal with today's matters. He planned to tell her about Samuel Morgan's womanizing behavior. The agony of elongated pain was worse than a moment's suffering. Kira glanced at him, surprised. All right. She got out of the car and walked toward the elevator. Just as she reached the elevator, she overheard a few colleagues whispering. Did you hear? Someone was caught stealing ideas from the research and development department. Who? Someone's really crossing the line. How audacious. I heard it was a new intern. They must have some connections in the company to dare do such a thing. What kind of connections? Someone pointed upward. I heard it's related to him. Hence they placed the intern in Jalen Riley's group. That guy is domineering and forceful. The higher-ups have been on their toes for the past month. He wouldn't blatantly protect his intern, right? Isn't he worried about leaving a bad impression by mixing personal affairs with work? Well, I heard that guy was spoiled by old Mrs. Horton. When he was a kid in Ocean Ion, he was like a little tyrant. After so many years, showing bias to an intern wouldn't mean anything to him, right? The company has its rules and regulations. If he acts recklessly, won't it cause public outrage? He's young. He doesn't care about these things. Isn't Jake younger? But look at the people he hired for the company. Drive South is a leading figure in the new energy industry. Now look at the intern of that guy. Comparing both sides, it's evident that Jake Horton is more reliable. Absolutely like father like son. His father, Mr. Horton Sr., was always strict with himself and lenient with others. Speaking of which, Mr. Horton Sr. worked his way up diligently from the grassroots. Why didn't he get that position? Why was it taken by that man? Kira hadn't planned to pay these people any attention. After all, she found herself in an awkward predicament and realized that people were bound to talk about her behind her back. But she hadn't expected that the conversation would shift toward Lewis Horton. She narrowed her eyes. Having been working since middle school, she wasn't really an office rookie, so she immediately inferred that someone was fueling the fire behind the scenes and planned to drag Lewis into the mud. She recognized the person who had initiated the topic. It was Arian O'Neill, a researcher from Group 2 and a henchman of Jake Horton. Kira remembered the news Samuel Morgan had helped her look up. The first branch of the Horton family wanted to seize power back. She could sense the tension between Lewis and the first branch of the family during her last visit there. Jake wanted to use this issue to stir up public opinion. Even if it couldn't inflict any real harm on Lewis, it could still undermine his reputation in the company. Kira scoffed. She stepped forward and spoke casually. It's fine if you gossip about me, but shouldn't you check for any surveillance cameras around before spreading rumors about the boss? As soon as she said this, the group of people immediately raised their heads to check their surroundings. Seeing no surveillance cameras, they breathed a sigh of relief and then realized they had been played. Everyone turned toward Kira. Who are you? Before Kira could say anything, Arian said, Let me introduce her to you. She's the new intern from the Research and Development Department. Arian smirked and said, Miss Olson must be close to Mr. Horton. The crime of stealing ideas is a significant one, and now that all evidence is complete, she still has the nerve to show up at work as if nothing happened. With that said, everyone turned their gaze toward Kira, their brows furrowing. All of them were office workers. If their hard work was stolen one day, they would undoubtedly be outraged. However, Kira wasn't intimidated by these glances, but rather asked, somewhat puzzled, I'm close to Mr. Horton? Arian immediately said, You're not going to deny it, are you? It was Mr. Davis who personally escorted you to the R&D department. Our team members all saw it. As he said this, he sighed, pretending to offer consolation. Even if Mr. Horton is backing you, you shouldn't have stolen Drive South concepts. Do you know the significance of Drive South to the R&D department? Our Vice President Jake Horton invited him over, spending great efforts and resources to make a huge contribution to the R&D department. If this incident makes Drive South leave, even Mr. Horton couldn't bear the wrath of the entire R&D department, could he? Everyone around nodded instantly. But Kira suddenly laughed. You got it wrong. I'm just an acquaintance of Mr. Horton. He has always kept a low profile and didn't make a fuss about hiring me for the company. Arian was startled. What did I get wrong? Just then, the elevator arrived and the group of people walked in. They didn't notice that Lewis and Tom were approaching from a distance and had heard their conversation. While Lewis didn't show any change in expression, Tom's face immediately dropped. As expected, someone was using Kira's situation to scheme against his boss. But at this point, Kira didn't try to avoid suspicion. Instead, she brought the attention back toward his boss. It was just too outrageous. Tom couldn't help but say angrily, "Boss, did you hear? She's openly claiming that she's connected to you. Everybody knows about her relationship with you now. What good would this do for her? She's so stupid." After saying this, he said, "Boss, I think you really shouldn't get involved with her matter. Everybody knows about your relationship with her now. If you still choose to protect her, in everybody's eyes, you'll become a despotic ruler who disregards justice." Lewis narrowed his eyes. His stern expression didn't change. He looked ahead and said lightly, "Only the weak are swayed by opinions." Leaving these words behind, he straightened his clothes and strode into the exclusive elevator for CEOs. Tom followed him into the elevator, only to hear him speak with authority, "Go to the administrative department." Tom should have known that Lewis's decision wouldn't change. Tom pressed the button reluctantly and sighed to himself. It's no wonder that everyone made those comparisons. The R&D department was the core of the company, and many people kept an eye on it. In the past month, the R&D department had taken in two people. One was Drive South, Jake's connection. The other was Kira, the boss's associate. The two were worlds apart. Tom inhaled deeply. If Drive South were Lewis's connection, then Lewis would surely win this battle in a splendid way. Ding! The elevator arrived. The curtain was officially raised on this case of stolen plans. Enhance. Kira stepped out of the elevator, heading toward Group 1. She only took 2 steps when Arian's voice rounded out from behind her. "Miss Olson, I don't know what your relationship with Mr. Horton is, but you should have noticed that his reputation in the company isn't good. He may not be our boss in the end. So, I advise you not to offend Vice President Horton." He was a confidant of Jake, and through several meetings, it was clear to him that Jake had feelings for Kira. He spoke in a low voice. "If you join Vice President Horton, your life will be easier than now. At least he has a way to help you solve the problem you're about to face." Kira gave him an indifferent glance and went straight into Group 1 without saying a word. It was Monday. After a delightful weekend, people often barely made it on time for work. But today, everyone from Group 1 is already here, sitting in the rest area and looking worriedly at Jalen and Luca. Jalen had a stern look on his face. As soon as Kira entered, everyone stood up abruptly, obviously wanting to speak, but holding back. Luca quickly approached her. "Kira, about the university?" Before he could finish, the director of the R&D department and Jake appeared at the door. "Jalen Riley, Kira Olson, come on. The administrative department is waiting for us." Jalen frowned and stood up. He looked at Kira. "Let's go." The group walked toward the elevator together. On the way, Jake suddenly spoke. "I thought you would call me in the last 2 days." He was confident and didn't try to keep his voice down. Kira narrowed her eyes, but didn't say anything. Jake continued, "By the way, in addition to the personnel of the administrative department, there will be 2 guests today. They're the principal of Ocean Ion University and the dean of the Energy College. The dean has heard about your theft of Drive South plan and wants to expel you. You should know about this, right?" Upon hearing this, Jalen sneered, "Jake Horton, I remember you all graduated from that university, right? Why do you have to go to the teacher for everything?" Still not weaned, Jake chuckled coldly. "I am also from Ocean Ion University. Of course, I can't sit back and watch the reputation of Ocean Ion University be tarnished by such a person. The principal and dean are here today to confirm that if the situation is true, they won't be lenient. Kira, aren't you willing to admit your mistake even now?" Kira replied slowly, "I didn't do anything wrong. What should I admit? You are hopeless." The group soon arrived at the administrative department. Jake and the director of the R&D department entered the conference room first. As Kira was about to follow, Jalen suddenly patted her on the shoulder. I'm your boss. If you make any mistakes, it's my responsibility. Even if Jake brings Drive south here to confront you, I'll defend you. Leaving these words behind, Jalen walked into the room with a look of heading to the execution ground. Kira thought, there's really no need for that. She twitched the corner of her mouth and followed inside, only to find that the conference room was large and already occupied by more than a dozen people. The members of the administrative department all had solemn expressions. The principal and the dean were invited and sat on either side of the room. To Kira's surprise, Lewis was also sitting among the bystanders. The man was dressed in a suit, with the buttons on his shirt up to the top and matching tie, exuding a sense of rigor and elegance. Upon hearing the footsteps, he glanced at her. His gaze lingered on Kira for a moment before quickly shifting away, as if his presence here had nothing to do with her. Tom, standing behind him, looked as if he'd just swallowed a lemon. He shot Kira a glare. However, Kira didn't mind and only gave them a gentle smile. Of course, she understood that the busy Lewis was here because he cared about her. No, it was to spare his grandmother the trouble, so he came to look after her. She could imagine how this man would explain his actions. With a slight smile, she entered the room gracefully. The administrative department had to follow procedure. The head of the administrative department spoke first. Vice President Horton, where is the evidence you mentioned? Kira also looked at him curiously. She had no idea what the evidence that Jake was referring to was. Jake took out his phone and glanced at it. Just in time. They're here. With that, there was a knock on the door. Arian led two people into the room. These two people were Isla and Poppy. Kira's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Isla appeared calm as she walked up to Jake, calling out cheerfully, "Hello, Jake." Poppy seemed intimidated by the grand occasion and was shrinking back a little. She looked around and then showed a pleasing smile. Jake pointed at her and said, "Here's my evidence. Let me introduce her to you. This is Kira Olsen's mother." Everyone was startled and instinctively looked at Kira. Jalen nudged her. "Is that truth?" Kira clenched her jaw, remaining silent. But Poppy suddenly rushed in front of her. "Kira, our plan to steal the plan has been exposed. I didn't realize there were cameras in the ward, so we were caught. They now have evidence." As she said this, Isla took out a flash drive and plugged it into the computer. The screen showed the scene in the ward where Mrs. Olsen was. Poppy sneaked in, then secretly opened Isla's laptop, plugged in a USB drive, and did something. Isla sighed. "I installed the camera just to record the time the doctor gave my mom medication. I didn't expect it to record this." "Kira, how could you let your mom steal things for you?" Poppy immediately apologized. "It's my fault. Kira doesn't know about this. I saw her working so hard, so I decided to do this. It has nothing to do with her. I'm sorry. The child just graduated and wanted to prove herself. I, as a mother, couldn't bear to see her working so hard." She looked around and suddenly knelt on the ground. "I'm begging you, don't punish Kira. Punish me if you want to, but don't call the police. Give her another chance." The head of the administrative department hurried over and held her arm. "Please stand up." But Poppy cried, "Unless the company forgives Kira, I won't stand up." Seeing this, the people around them couldn't help but sigh. Alas, all loving parents are the same. Jake said haughtily, "Kira, with all the evidence present, what else do you have to say?" Isla was watching the drama from the side. She knew that the moment Poppy appeared, this imperfect evidence became perfect. After all, no mother in this world would slander her daughter. If Kira denied it, people would only despise her even more, thinking that she was letting her mother take the fall. Horton Group couldn't tolerate such an employee. It was a done deal. All eyes were on Kira, but she still remained calm, standing with her eyes down. She even took out her phone and checked a WhatsApp message. They didn't know that the message Kira received was from Samuel. "Boss, I'll be there soon." Kira laid down her phone and then finally raised her head to look at the crowd. Her biological mother was setting her up, so she probably should have been a bit upset. But right now, she only felt numb. She had gotten used to it. The worse she got treated, the more she believed that as long as it was for Isla's benefit, Poppy would stop at nothing. Her gaze coldly swept past Poppy and landed on Isla. Kira was actually very curious about how much Isla had charmed Poppy and made the latter so devoted to her. She didn't say anything because she knew that until Samuel came to help verify her identity, no matter what she said, it would be useless. These people wouldn't believe her. But even though she didn't say anything, someone else spoke for her. The tone of Jalen was full of arrogance. What kind of direct evidence is this? Based on the video, you can only see that Kira's mother copied something from Isla's computer. What exactly did she copy? Who knows? Jake snickered. Isla is the one responsible for delivering Drive South solution to me. Kira's mom copied something from her, and then Kira submitted a solution identical to Drive South's. Doesn't this explain everything? Jalen, even if you want to protect Kira, you should show some restraint. Jalen stood his ground. Protect her? I'm just stating my doubts. This evidence can't directly prove that it was Kira who ordered her mother to steal. As soon as these words came out, Poppy, who was kneeling there, immediately cried out, "That's right. It wasn't Kira who told me to steal. It was my own idea. It has nothing to do with Kira. It's all my fault." She grabbed the arm of the head of the administrative department. "Please don't involve Kira in this. My daughter has just graduated from university. She can't lose this job." The head of the administrative department sighed at hearing these words. "What did you steal?" Poppy immediately said, "It's the new energy solution for hydrogen fuel." The head of the administrative department nodded. "Do you know what hydrogen fuel is?" Poppy was taken aback and then shook her head. The head of the administrative department continued. "You see, even I don't understand what it is, and I'm not even in research and development. Therefore, if your daughter didn't tell you what to steal, then how were you able to steal for her?" Poppy seemed to be rendered speechless. She couldn't say a word and finally bowed her head. "I don't care. I did this. It has nothing to do with my daughter. Call the police and take me away. It's my fault." The head of the administrative department sighed deeply, looking at Poppy with nothing but regret and pity. Jake was looking at Poppy. He should have really disliked this woman, but seeing her sacrifice everything for her own daughter, he found it hard to be unsympathetic. Jake suddenly roared, "Kira, say something. Are you really planning to let your mom take the fall? Do you even know the basic principle of being a daughter? Do you have any conscience at all?" The head of the administrative department also said coldly, "Vice President Horton, don't worry. My department will get to the bottom of this. The Horton Group will not wrong any mother, nor will we tolerate an ungrateful employee." Kira knew it would be like this. The result of denying the claim would only draw these people's suspicion. She let out a soft laugh, knowing that this was definitely not over yet. Indeed, Isla sighed. She hypocritically took a few steps forward to Poppy. "Aunt Hill, you may want to take all the blame, but it's impossible. Nobody here is a fool. We all know what's going on. The best way now is to admit your mistake and beg the Horton Group for forgiveness. Otherwise, Kira will be expelled from her university." "Is that so?" Poppy looked at the head of the administrative department for help. The head of the administrative department nodded. "Yes, we have our own judgment, and we can see that you're covering up for your daughter." Poppy dropped to the ground as if she had lost all her strength. But suddenly, she seemed to understand something. She walked on her knees to Kira, grabbed her leg, and said, "Kira, there is no way around it. Just admit your mistakes. As long as you admit your mistakes, the Horton Group will give you a chance. Even if they fire you, you still have your qualifications, and you can find another job. But if you don't and get expelled from school, your future will be ruined." She seemed to be in severe pain and even squeezed a few tears out of her eyes. But in a place where others couldn't see, her eyes turned vicious. Kira looked at her mother kneeling in front of her and still found it absurd. In the past, Poppy had always been straightforward with her, forcing her to give in to Isla whenever she made a request. Had she become a good actor now? Did Isla teach her that? Poppy was still whimpering. "HL, admit the mistake for Kira. As her mother, I'll kneel and apologize to you all. I hope you can give her another chance, and hope that the school won't expel her." She really kowtowed several times. The sound made everyone wince. What a good mother indeed. The head of the administrative department rushed over and tried to help her up, but couldn't manage. She then turned towards Kira and shouted, "What are you standing around for? Your mother is so sincere. How could she give birth to an ungrateful daughter like you? On the side, the vice-chancellor of Oceanine University also showed a look of pity. The dean spoke directly. Kira, you still refuse to admit your mistake? Are you trying to force your mother to death? How could our school have a student like you? Chancellor, you see what kind of person she is. Even Professor Miller insists on vouching for her. I wonder how she managed to bewitch Professor Miller. He's so confused that I had to suspend him. The vice-chancellor frowned, not liking what he heard. You better watch your words. He came here today with the bean because Professor Miller had called him, saying the bean was going to expel a student. A student's education is their business card, and getting expelled was such a serious matter. They even suspended a professor. The vice-chancellor felt it had gone too far. He came here at Professor Miller's request. But looking at it now, it seemed as though the dean wasn't completely wrong. He couldn't help but look at Kira. Young lady, you must apologize quickly. If you keep this up, not even Professor Miller will be able to protect you. Poppy immediately stopped kowtowing and looked at her. Kira, did you hear that? Everyone is telling you to admit your mistakes quickly. They'll give you another chance. The conference room grew silent. Isla was startled. She turned and looked at Jake, whispering, Jake, it was evident from the last gathering that Samuel and Kira have an unusual relationship. Has he come here to put in a good word for Kira and plead for Horton Group to take it easy on her? Jake immediately tightened his jaw and addressed the person outside the door. Please lead Mr. Morgan to the research room. I'll meet him once we have finished dealing with the current situation. The person outside replied, All right. Just as Jake was preparing to leave, a deep voice suddenly said, Let him in. Everyone turned towards the sound and saw Lewis, who was seated in the Inquisitor's seat, had spoken up. Jake hurriedly interjected, Uncle, Samuel is Drive South's assistant. I don't want to make a scene about this situation as we may potentially concern Drive South. It would be better if we didn't let Samuel in. Kira raised an eyebrow. She had overlooked this possibility. She hadn't thought that Samuel might not be allowed into this meeting room. However, she wasn't worried. As long as she revealed her true identity, they had to summon Samuel to confront her. After all, Samuel was the only one present who had seen Drive South in person. As Kira pondered her strategy, Lewis spoke up again. Samuel is here at my invitation. Kira was perplexed. She looked over in surprise, but saw Lewis acting as calm as ever. Those deep, black eyes of his revealed nothing of his inner thoughts as he spoke. If she didn't know the truth, she would indeed think that Samuel was invited by him. As Lewis finished his sentence, he glanced at Tom. Tom instantly understood Lewis' intention and quickly headed out. Realizing Lewis had started to cover for Kira, Tom couldn't resist shooting her a look. She was a real femme fatale. The boss was now shielding this dangerous woman. Tom could only hope that Samuel would put up a good enough performance to stun this group and not cause Lewis to be clouded by sentiment, getting a bad reputation for condoning deceit in the process. Soon, Samuel followed Tom into the room. Samuel, traveling light with just a suitcase in hand, had clearly rushed here right after landing. Upon entering, his gaze landed on Kira. He cleared his throat and spoke. There was a bit of traffic on the way, so I was delayed. Kira simply nodded in acknowledgement. Realizing they were still exchanging pleasantries, Tom couldn't help but hurriedly interject. Mr. Morgan, are you here to attest to everyone that it was you who supplied Miss Kira with Drive South's proposal? If Samuel admitted to this, the matter would be resolved. After all, the evidence provided by Poppy wasn't direct proof. If Lewis really wanted, he could just retain the person involved. It would even seem quite reasonable. Just as Tom was entertaining these thoughts, he heard Samuel exclaiming in surprise, No, not at all. Why would I share Drive South's design proposal with others? Tom was dumbfounded. Astonished, Tom stared at Samuel, silently cursing in his mind. This utterly faithless man. Did he rush all the way here just to disassociate himself from Kira? This enraged Tom so much he was shaking all over. Unsurprisingly, one couldn't rely on a womanizer. Everyone else in the room let out a sigh of relief. The moment Samuel entered, Isla's heart pounded fearfully in her chest, but she relaxed at Samuel's unexpected refusal. Jake said, "Mr. Morgan, did you come here today because you heard about the theft of Drive South's proposal, and you wanted to attend the hearing? Don't worry. We, at Horton Group, will undoubtedly make it right for Drive South." At hearing this, a sly smile spread across Samuel's face, and he said, "Yes, you must clear my boss's name." Having said that, Samuel swaggered toward the juror's bench and plopped down next to the vice-chancellor of Oceanion University. In a split second when no one was watching, he winked at Kira. Kira was speechless. Engaging Samuel in conversation, the vice-chancellor said, "Mr. Morgan, we've long known of your reputation. Our university has always wanted to invite Drive South to be a tutor. I wonder if you could convey our sincere invitation." Samuel, sighing, said, "Well, it all depends on how today's incident is handled." The vice-chancellor was taken aback. In response, the dean quickly added, "Don't worry. We won't shelter the student who stole Drive South's proposal. She'll definitely be expelled." The vice-chancellor tightened his jaw, increasingly displeased. Even if Horton Group accused Kira of stealing the proposal, whether to expel the student would have to be decided by the university through a meeting. How could they make such a commitment on the spot? It felt as if they were trying to suck up to someone. Totally disgraceful. Samuel's eyes grew colder, his words betraying visible mockery. Expulsion? As a school, shouldn't you protect your students to the best of your ability? How come you're so quick to wash your hands off the situation? The dean felt rebuked. It's because Kira made too big a mistake. Oh, and what mistake is that? She stole Drive South's proposal. Samuel retorted, "Is there any proof?" The dean pointed at Poppy. "She's Kira's mother. She admitted to it herself. Furthermore, the CCTV footage clearly shows her stealing the proposal from Miss Isla's computer." Indeed? Is that what Miss Isla is saying? Isla, who had been trying to minimize her involvement in this situation, had no choice but to step forward as Samuel mentioned her / "Yes, that's correct." She then looked toward Poppy. "Aunt Hill, this is Drive South's assistant. If Drive South doesn't pursue this matter, I don't think Horton Group will either." Upon hearing this, Poppy seemed to understand something. She immediately rushed over to Samuel, knelt, and started a kowtow. "Mr. Morgan, please forgive Kira. I assure you she didn't do it deliberately." Jake tried to intervene. "Please don't." However, Poppy continued to sob. "For the sake of Kira, I'll do anything. I'm willing to kowtow, and I won't stop until you forgive her. Kira, please admit your mistake. I'm begging you. You'll do anything?" Finally, Kira spoke. Her voice was soft, slow, and calm. "As long as you stop tarnishing my reputation, I'll be forever grateful." On hearing this, Poppy choked and started crying more fiercely. "Kira, I'm tarnishing you. It's just that I couldn't hide it anymore." Jake also snapped. "Kira, how can you be so stubborn?" The dean of Oceanion University chimed in. "Kira, watch your mouth. How can you accuse your mother of tarnishing you? You're so reckless with your words." Having vented his feelings, he turned to Samuel as if to prove he was right. "Mr. Morgan, did you see? This girl lies without batting an eye. And this isn't the first time. She often skips classes, leaves classes early, and is often reported as not returning to her dorm at night. It's only right that we expel her." "Is that so?" Samuel scoffed. "But to my knowledge, Drive South didn't give the proposal to Miss Isla. How did this kind and innocent mother manage to steal it?" Upon hearing that statement, the room fell abruptly into silence. Everyone turned their eyes from Samuel to Isla, completely dumbfounded. Jake also looked at Isla in confusion. "What's going on?" Isla bit her lip and directly addressed Samuel. "The solution proposed by Drive South for the Olsons was sent to us separately. It has nothing to do with your company. You're just his assistant and have no knowledge about this." Jake let out a breath of relief. Isla continued, "Mr. Morgan, is it about time to put an end to this? If that is what you're implying, there's need to be so roundabout." She looked at Jake. "Jake, Horton Group is not a loss. Can I let go of this matter?" As expected, Jake was infuriated. "Mr. Morgan, this is an internal issue of Horton Group. It's not your place as an outsider to instruct us." He had been respectful to Samuel because of Samuel's role as Drive South's assistant. It wasn't that he was actually afraid of Samuel. Horton Group is the most prestigious family business in Ocean Ion. Very few can even catch his eye. Samuel said, "Actually, I am quite aware of this matter. Drive South didn't send an email to Isla." Jake scoffed. If Drive South didn't send it, then how did Isla get the solution? Samuel shrugged. Indeed, how did she get it? Jake was taken aback. What do you mean? It's quite obvious. Samuel pointed at Poppy. It was given by this lady. Wasn't it captured that she was copying something from a flash drive to Isla's computer? The crowd was dumbfounded. Seriously, was that even a valid interpretation? Everyone was left dumbfounded for a moment. Jake almost burst out laughing. Mr. Morgan, you mean that Kira's mother stole Kira's plan and gave it to Isla? Don't you think your words are rather ridiculous? What's so funny about it? Samuel suddenly shifted his focus. Mr. Horton, do you believe that what I said was correct? Upon hearing this, everyone subconsciously turned their gaze towards Lewis. Despite his silence, his strong presence was undeniably noticeable. Lewis pondered slightly, and his deep, pleasant voice echoed in the conference room. Indeed, such an interpretation is plausible. At his words, the faces of several people in the room changed. Jake, not daring to vent his anger toward Lewis, snapped at Samuel. So, are you saying that the plan belongs to Kira and not Drive South? Samuel chuckled. It belongs to Drive South, too. Jake was confused. On the other hand, Isla came to an understanding. Mr. Morgan, are you suggesting that the plan of Kira and Drive South are coincidentally identical? Now, Jake was genuinely irritated. So that's what you're aiming for. Not only do you want to clear your suspicion, but you also want to take credit for others' work. That's a brilliant scheme indeed. He turned to look at Lewis once again. Uncle, is that what you think as well? Lewis pursed his lips. His eyes were deep and perceptive, sensing that something was off. With Samuel's confident appearance and Kira's upright posture ever since she entered the room, their relationship wasn't what he thought it was. The idea he had once suppressed suddenly resurfaced. He suddenly turned his gaze to Kira, his pupils slightly contracted. Could it be? Seeing that he was silent, suggesting that he tacitly agreed, Jake felt justified. I disagree. Uncle, I know Kira was brought in here because of your connections, and that Kira and Samuel are very close. But Drive South came because of me, so I need to stand up for him. I absolutely disapprove of what you're doing. You're tarnishing the integrity of researchers. His words resonated with the others. Everyone turned their condemning gazes toward Lewis. That was too much. The guilty party who stole someone else's work. Not only would she escape punishment, but now she was trying to take credit for it. This news, if spread out, could incite public anger within the company. Tom was furious too. What on earth were Samuel and Kira up to? It would be good enough if they could shed the accusations, but now they wanted more. How greedy. Now, this situation had put his boss in the hot seat. But since Lewis didn't speak up, as his assistant, Tom couldn't say much either. He could only seethe in silence. Just as he was getting anxious, his phone buzzed, and he saw a link sent by someone from the secretary's office. It was the company's internal network where an anonymous person had been live blogging the contents of this meeting room. Under that post, a crowd of people was already commenting. Just because the intern is pretty, Mr. Horton is defending her. Is that it? This is really disappointing. I stand with Vice President Jake. He speaks for the researchers. I originally thought the company's atmosphere had improved after Mr. Horton came into position, but now it seems like I was mistaken. An intern's mother would help outsiders bully her own daughter? This mother is wrongfully accused. How tragic. I'm Drive South's fan, and it's unacceptable that someone stole his work. I'll be the first one to object. I have to say, I'm truly grateful that Vice President Jake was able to invite Drive South to provide technical support. Working with Drive South is the greatest honor of my life. Now, look at Mr. Horton. Who did he bring into the company? An intern who's nothing more than just a pretty face. I have no words. If Drive South feels wronged and resigns because of this intern, I'm going to lose it. The company's public opinion had already taken shape, and it was a hard blow to Lewis. Tom, scared, quickly handed his phone to Lewis, hoping the latter would change his defensive attitude toward Kira. However, Lewis didn't even glance at the phone. Instead, his gaze was locked onto Kira with a complicated emotion in his eyes. Tom was dumbfounded. "Boss, at this critical moment, can you not be blinded by her beauty?" Just when Tom was growing anxious, the head of the administrative department stood up. "Mr. Horton, I can't agree with this. It goes against my principles." The rest of the administrative department staff also stood up. "I agree. Drive South is a respectable person. He should not be treated like this." The dean of Ocean University also frowned deeply. He dared not scold Lewis and could only yell at Kira. "Miss Olson, you have truly disappointed your teacher. Drive South is a person whom we all respect. How could you do such a thing?" The vice-chancellor also shook his head. Simultaneously, Poppy also took the opportunity to cry. "Kira, we shouldn't make more mistakes." Isla looked down, and the corners of her mouth revealed a triumphant smile. Kira had become a street rat that everyone wanted to beat. Jake's confidence surged, and he looked at Samuel. "As Drive South's assistant, you're not defending Drive South's interests but scheming against her. Do you think you're being fair to Drive South?" Instead of being angry at the accusation, Samuel simply smiled. "Why don't we just ask her?" After finishing his sentence, he strode to Kira amidst the astonished stares of the people and respectfully asked, "Dr. South, how do you think I'm doing as an assistant?" The conference room was dead quiet. Everyone was stupefied, looking at Samuel incredulously. Their eyes were sliding back and forth between Kira and Samuel, feeling as if their brains had frozen. Why would Samuel call Kira Drive South? Could Kira be Drive South? Jake shouted, "Samuel, what are you messing around with? Drive South's identity isn't to be taken lightly." Samuel chuckled. "I knew you'd all question this." He took out his patent proof from his bag and held it up for everyone to see. It was Drive South's identification, and the name written on it was clearly Kira. With the official seals, there was no way to forge this. Jake's pupils contracted, and he stood there in shock as though struck by lightning. He stared blankly at Kira, suddenly feeling like he was a joke. At first, he gave up on her to choose Isla, not only because of Kira's illegitimate status, but also because Isla could provide him with the connections of Drive South, helping him secure a strong footing in the Horton Group's R&D department. But now, he was being made a fool. He glared at Isla, his face twisted into fury. What is happening? Isla was shaking uncontrollably. Originally, implying that Poppy had stolen Kira's plan and claiming it was given by Drive South was a risky move, but everything was going according to her. Everyone had assumed that it was Kira who had stolen the plan, and to avoid angering Drive South, they would certainly not bring it up in front of him. Even if Samuel showed up to testify on behalf of Kira, not many people would believe him. But she never expected that Kira would turn out to be Drive South. She bit her lip hard, trying to say something to appease Jake's fury, but she didn't know what to say. Poppy, seeing this, violently picked herself up from the ground and flung her hand toward Kira. "Bastard, how can you be Drive South? You were always a poor student and barely scraped into college. This is impossible. Samuel must be lying for you. Tell everyone that you're a fraud, that you stole the plan from your sister. Where is the mother-daughter love from just a moment ago?" Kira took a step back to dodge her attack, saying coldly, "Have you forgotten why my grades were poor?" Poppy was startled. "When I first started school, my very first exam, I ranked first in the class. Who was it that made me kneel all night for trying to overshadow Isla? Who was it that made me leave all my exams blank and stop me from learning? Who threatened me, saying if I dared to do well in school, I would be sold to human traffickers?" Kira looked down, her tone indifferent. "I had to work harder than anyone else. After all, getting just low grades during an entrance exam was hard." She rarely mentioned her past, but now with Poppy painting a picture of a perfect mother, these words needed to be said to refute her accusations. Everyone was stunned and looked at Poppy in disbelief. Who would believe that such a mother existed in this world? The head of the administrative department was frozen in place. He originally thought that this mother he felt so sorry for was a pitiful person, but now he knew the truth. Lewis stood up his lips pressed tightly together as he looked at Kira somberly. Her words were light and seemed like she was talking about someone else's story, but he knew that every word she uttered tore at the wounds of her past, presenting to everyone a bloody truth. He remembered the things he had asked Tom to investigate. She left the Olsen family in middle school, worked while studying, and barely made it into Oceanion University. Oceanion University's tuition wasn't cheap, yet she never applied for financial aid. She worked countless jobs outside. When he saw Tom's investigation, he didn't feel sorry for her. But at this moment, as she let down all her pride and calmly revealed her dark past, he felt a constriction in his chest, so uncomfortable that it was suffocating. Poppy, listening to all this, showed no remorse and instead shouted angrily, "You faked your grades? Well, you're playing me, Kira. How dare you trick me at such a young age? I shouldn't have sent you to school. You're nothing but garbage. A bastard. You were so cunning to keep it hidden. You secretly set up this situation, deliberately framing Isla." Enough. Lewis couldn't listen any further. He snorted and looked directly at Isla. "Miss Isla, do you have anything to say?" Poppy was Kira's mother. In this matter, she was clearly just a pawn being used. Lewis didn't want to deal with her and looked directly at the mastermind. Immediately, Isla clenched her fists, her instincts making her look toward Jake. Jake's face was gloomy as he stared at her. "You better give me an explanation." Isla's eyes filled with tears, and she cried. I don't know. Jake, please believe me. Drive South really did send me an email. Ant Hill, what the hell is going?" Poppy scoffed. "I did all this. It has nothing to do with Isla." She looked at Kira. "You called the police on me the other day, got me arrested, and thrown in jail for 2 days. Since getting out of custody, I've been thinking of ways to take revenge on you. I heard from Isla in passing about the competition in your R&D department, and that's how I came up with this plan. When you visited Mrs. Olsen in the hospital that day, I stole your computer and stole the file. The video you guys saw just now, I wasn't stealing something from Isla's computer. I was delivering something to her. I was using Drive South to defeat you, an ungrateful daughter." She no longer looked helpless and pitiable as she did before, but instead like a shrew. With her hands on her hips, she stared at Kira. "I'm your mom. What do you do to me? Plus, I'm not an employee of the Horton Group, so you can't punish me." Kira found her ignorance laughable. Just as she was about to speak, Lewis's voice once again rang out. "Jalen, take. Drive South back first. I'll handle the matter here." Kira was slightly startled. She understood that Lewis was worried that her position would complicate matters if Horton Group decided to hold Poppy accountable. So he deliberately asked her to leave. She thought for a moment and accepted this gesture of goodwill. She, Jalen, and Samuel left the conference room together. They took the elevator down to the R&D department. Jalen looked stunned, staring at Kira as if he was seeing a ghost. It wasn't until they got back to the office that he finally came back to his senses. The moment they returned to the office, their whole team swarmed over. "What happened? What was the final verdict? Jalen, why do you look so upset? Is Miss Olsen facing serious consequences?" Everyone was extremely worried, especially Luca, who was pacing nervously. "Kira, what should we do now? I heard that Drive South's assistant also came. We can go find him and ask Drive South to be lenient." "Right, as long as Drive South speaks for you. This matter will be over." Kira didn't know what to say. While everyone was talking, Jalen finally snapped back to reality. He pointed at Kira and stuttered, Are you really? Dr. South,